In this video, we're going to be breaking down 3 hours of Hall of Fame SpongeBob lore. Let's get started with the video. First up, we got Band Geeks, the Super Bowl halftime dream and Squidward's greatest victory, the greatest episode in SpongeBob history. Band Geeks stands as the most beloved episode in SpongeBob SquarePants history, and for good reason. This 11-minute masterpiece from Season 2 captures everything that made the show great during its golden era. The episode originally aired on the 7th of September 2001 and drew 2.96 million viewers. Over 2 decades later, it remains the highest-rated SpongeBob episode on IMDb with a near-perfect score of 9.9 out of 10. The phone call that started everything. The episode begins with Squidward playing his clarinet at home when someone rings his doorbell. A doctor from the pet hospital down the street has arrived, claiming they received a call about a dying animal on the premises. This opening joke perfectly establishes Squidward's terrible clarinet playing, something that becomes central to the plot. After slamming the door on the doctor, Squidward receives a phone call that changes everything. On the other end of the line is Squilliam Fancison, a character making his debut in this episode. Squilliam and Squidward knew each other from band class, and Squilliam represents everything Squidward wishes he could be. He's successful, wealthy, and accomplished. Squilliam leads a fancy band that's scheduled to play at the Bubble Bowl next week, which sends Squidward into a stuttering fit. The Bubble Bowl is clearly a massive venue, the kind of place Squidward has always dreamed of performing. Squilliam explains that he's busy next week and asks if Squidward's band can cover for him. When Squidward stammers, Squilliam immediately knows the truth. Squidward doesn't have a band. Squilliam is about to hang up when Squidward's pride takes over. He claims he does have a band and they will play the Bubble Bowl. This lie sets the entire plot in motion. Squilliam wishes him good luck and hopes the audience brings lots of ibuprofen, a cutting insult suggesting the performance will give people headaches. Assembling the world's worst band. After hanging up, Squidward realizes what he's done. He needs to assemble a marching band immediately. He puts up posters around Bikini Bottom, advertising the opportunity to join the greatest musical sensation ever to hit town. The posters promise fulfillment, fame, and free refreshments. Various characters read these posters, including Sandy, Plankton, Mrs. Puff, Mr. Krabs, and Larry the Lobster. Squidward arrives late to the first practice at 8:35 p.m., blaming a music rental clerk who didn't know an oboe from an elbow. This joke about elbows and oboes is what Squidward considers band humor. When he enters the practice room, everyone is already there, holding instruments and talking amongst themselves. Squidward immediately takes charge, asking how many people have played musical instruments before. Plankton holds up a triangle and asks if instruments of torture count. Squidward says no. Then Patrick, holding a trumpet, raises his hand and asks if mayonnaise is an instrument. This has become one of the most iconic lines in SpongeBob history, spawning countless memes and references across the internet. Squidward tells Patrick that mayonnaise is not an instrument. When Patrick raises his hand again, Squidward cuts him off, saying horseradish isn't an instrument either. Patrick lowers his hand. The fact that nobody has any musical experience doesn't bother Squidward. He arrogantly claims he has enough talent for everyone. When Mr. Krabs asks when they'll get free food, Squidward realizes this group is going to be difficult. He attempts to teach them by playing 6 notes on his clarinet and asking each section to repeat. The brass section sounds terrible. The wind section sounds terrible. When he asks the drums to play, the drummers completely misunderstand. They blow on their drumsticks, which shoot out of their mouths and pin Squidward to the wall. His response is darkly funny. Too bad that didn't kill me. 4 days of chaos and disaster. The next attempt at practice focuses on marching and rhythm. Squidward wants everyone standing in straight rows of 5. SpongeBob asks if this is the part where they start kicking. Squidward explains that kicking is for a chorus line, not a marching band. But Patrick gets excited about kicking and immediately kicks Sandy in the leg. Sandy jumps on Patrick and beats him up as they roll outside. Everyone stares at the closed doors as Patrick's screams echo from outside. Then Patrick sticks his head back in with a completely random announcement about someone's white sedan having its lights on. When Patrick walks back in, Sandy has stuffed his entire body into a trombone. As he walks and sits down, his movements create trombone sounds. This visual gag is pure cartoon gold and shows the creativity of the animation team. By day 2, the band is attempting to march down a street while playing. They're performing a butchered version of Semper Fidelis, a famous military march. Squidward calls out instructions to the flag twirlers, asking them to really spin those flags. The flag twirlers take this instruction too literally. They spin so hard hard that they fly up into the sky and crash into a blimp, causing it to explode. All 3 flag twirlers die in the explosion. One band member plays taps as everyone mourns while Squidward curls into a fetal position on the ground. This dark humor was typical of early SpongeBob and showed the writers weren't afraid to push boundaries. Day 3 arrives and Squidward checks on Plankton's harmonica solo. Plankton claims it's tremendous and demonstrates by running back and forth through the harmonica holes. He quickly runs out of breath, walking slowly to the last hole where he blows a weak raspberry before fainting from exhaustion. The final practice falls apart. By day 4, their last night before the show, Squidward admits the band hasn't improved at all. Patrick is literally chewing on his trumpet. Squidward develops a theory. People talk loud when they want to act smart, so if they play loud, people might think they're good. He counts them off and they blast out such horrible noise that it breaks all the windows in the building. When the camera cuts back inside, Squidward's face is deformed, his shirt is ripped, and his baton breaks in half. Squidward immediately changes his theory. Maybe they should play so quietly that nobody can hear them. But then a conflict erupts. Harold yells that maybe they wouldn't sound so bad if some people didn't try to play with big, meaty claws. Mr. Krabs takes offense, asking what Harold just said. Harold repeats it louder. Big, meaty, claws. Mr. Krabs points out that these claws aren't just for attracting mates and tells Harold to bring it on. SpongeBob tries to intervene, suggesting they be smart and bring it off instead. But another band member insults SpongeBob by calling him a talking cheese who wants to preach to them. Squidward tries to restore order as everyone starts fighting. His main concern is the deposit on the equipment. Band members use their instruments as weapons. Mr. Krabs and another fish charge at each other with large woodwind instruments. Mrs. Puff slams them both with cymbals. Sandy breaks xylophone keys off another person's instrument. Patrick kicks Sandy, who chases him with a trumpet while Patrick screams. When the clock strikes 10, everyone immediately stops fighting because class is over. They casually say goodbye to each other and start heading for the door. Squidward slams it open and delivers an emotional speech. He tells them they took his one chance at happiness and crushed it into tiny, bite-sized pieces. He expected better from them, but guesses he's a loser for that too. He tells them not to bother showing up tomorrow because he'll just tell everyone they died in a marching accident. He thanks them for nothing and leaves crying. Patrick cheerfully responds, "You're welcome," completely missing the point. SpongeBob's inspiring speech. After Squidward leaves, SpongeBob asks what kind of monsters they are. This poor creature came to them in his hour of need, and they failed him. SpongeBob points out that Squidward has always been there for them when it was convenient for him. He asks Evelyn, who rescued her son Jimmy when he was trapped in a fire. She answers that it was a fireman. He asks Larry who revived him when his heart gave out from tanning pills. Larry says it was some guy in an ambulance. SpongeBob's logic is beautifully absurd. If they can all just pretend Squidward was a fireman or some guy in an ambulance, they can pull together and discover what it means to be in a marching band. Harold shouts, "Yeah, for the firemen," and everyone cheers. SpongeBob tells them to make Squidward proud and counts them off. This moment shows SpongeBob's genuine kindness and ability to inspire others, even through completely ridiculous reasoning. The Bubble Bowl Showdown. The scene transitions to the Bubble Bowl, where Squidward stands alone. He knows the band failed and assumes they'll have to find another group to play. His biggest hope is that Squilliam doesn't find out what happened. But as the camera zooms out, Squilliam is standing right there. Squidward screams and asks what he's doing there. Squilliam laughs and says he just wants to watch Squidward blow it. He asks where Squidward's band is. Squidward claims they couldn't come because they died. Squilliam points behind Squidward, where SpongeBob and the entire band are standing. Squidward screams so loud his eyes pop out of his head. SpongeBob announces they're ready to perform. Squilliam comments that this is exactly how he pictured Squidward's band would look, as SpongeBob dances eagerly in place. Squidward explains that's just SpongeBob's eager face. As they march into the Bubble Bowl, Squidward mutters that this will be the last time he can show his face in this town. SpongeBob, hearing this as encouragement, tells Squidward, That's the spirit. The bowl rises above a football field filled with live-action human fans waving towels and cheering. Patrick comments that these are some ugly-looking fish. SpongeBob suggests they might be in a toxic waste dump. Mr. Krabs says he thinks he's going to be sick. Sweet victory. Squidward nervously tells everyone to get this over with. He glances at Squilliam, who grins and bounces his unibrow mockingly. Squidward counts off. 1, 2, 3, 4. The band's horn players blast out an intro fanfare. Squidward opens his eyes in shock. What happens next is completely unexpected. Plankton plays the opening notes on a keyboard. SpongeBob begins singing, but the voice coming out isn't Tom Kenny's usual SpongeBob voice. It's the powerful rock vocals of David Glenn Isley, lead singer of the band Jufria. The song is Sweet Victory, written by David Glenn Isley and Bob Kulick specifically for this episode. Throughout the performance, Patrick plays electric drums while wearing sunglasses, Sandy shreds on electric guitar, Mrs. Puff plays electric bass, Mr. Krabs rocks a keytar, and Pearl blasts away on saxophone. As the chorus hits, Squilliam stares in complete shock. Squidward gives him the most smug grin imaginable and tosses his baton over his shoulder, conducting with just his arms. Squilliam literally has a heart attack from the shock. He faints and gets carried away on stretchers while Squidward waves a smug goodbye. Squidward runs to the middle of the stage as the band continues the finale. Squidward jumps into the air triumphantly, and the scene freezes on his moment of pure joy. The screen fades to black, ending the episode on the highest note possible. Why Band Geeks became legendary. The episode works on every level. The setup is simple but effective. Squidward's pride gets him into trouble, forcing him to attempt the impossible. The middle section follows a clear progression through 4 days of practice, each one showing the band getting worse instead of better. The humor ranges from silly wordplay to dark comedy to physical gags. Every character gets at least one funny moment. But what elevates Band Geeks to legendary status is the ending. After 10 minutes of watching everything go wrong, the audience expects Squidward to fail spectacularly at the Bubble Bowl. The writers set up this expectation perfectly. Even Squidward expects to fail. But then the band is actually incredible. The transformation happens instantly with no explanation. It's pure cartoon logic, and it's glorious. The music choice was genius. Sweet Victory sounds like an authentic stadium rock anthem from the 1,980 seconds because it basically is one. David Glenn Isley and Bob Kulick created a real song with genuine power and emotion. Hearing SpongeBob's character sing with such a powerful voice creates a hilarious contrast. The animation during the performance is top-notch. Seeing all the characters playing rock instruments while dressed in their marching band uniforms is visually striking. Patrick on drums with sunglasses, Sandy shredding guitar, Mr. Krabs with a keytar, each image is memorable. The live-action crowd shots add to the epic feeling. This was a huge moment happening in front of thousands of people. Squidward's emotional arc completes perfectly. He started the episode as his usual arrogant self, got humbled by his failures, delivered a heartbreaking speech about crushed dreams, and then experienced his greatest triumph. That final shot of him jumping in the air captures pure happiness. For once, Squidward gets to win. He defeats his rival, performs at his dream venue, and earns genuine respect from everyone. The episode gives him something he rarely receives, a truly happy ending. Cultural impact and legacy. Band Geeks has had an enormous impact on popular culture. Sweet Victory became so beloved that fans created an online petition to have it performed at the Super Bowl LII halftime show in 2019 as a tribute to SpongeBob creator Steven Hillenburg, who had recently passed away. The petition gathered over 1 million signatures. The NFL teased that something SpongeBob related would happen, and a brief clip from Band Geeks played before the halftime show began, showing Squidward introducing the band. However, the show then cut to Maroon 5 instead of playing the full song, which disappointed fans greatly. The disappointment from fans was so widespread that it became a major news story. Many felt the NFL had misled viewers and wasted an opportunity to honor Hillenburg properly. Some alternative sources like YouTube and Twitch played the full Band Geeks performance during the halftime show time slot, drawing huge audiences. The controversy showed just how much people cared about this episode and this song. "Mayonnaise is not an instrument" has become one of the most quoted SpongeBob lines ever. It appears constantly in memes, usually in contexts where someone suggests something absurd. The format works because Patrick's question is so genuinely stupid, yet asked with complete sincerity. Squidward's deadpan response makes it even funnier. The big meaty claws argument has also become a popular reference, often used when people are having silly arguments online. The phrase itself is ridiculous, but delivered with such aggression that it becomes hilarious. Mr. Krabs responding that his claws aren't just for attracting mates adds another layer of absurdity. The perfect episode. Band Geeks represents SpongeBob at its absolute best. The writing is tight with no wasted moments. Every scene serves the story while also being funny. The characters all act consistently with their established personalities. Squidward is pretentious and desperate for respect. SpongeBob is optimistic and kind even when it makes no logical sense. Patrick is spectacularly dumb. Mr. Krabs is cheap and mentions the equipment deposit during a fight. Plankton is tiny but enthusiastic. Everyone stays in character while contributing to the plot. The episode balances different types of humor expertly. There are visual gags like Patrick stuck in a trombone. There are dark jokes like the flag twirlers dying in an explosion. There are character-based jokes like Mr. Krabs only caring about free food. There are wordplay jokes like Squidward's band humor. There are absurdist moments like SpongeBob's fireman speech. Something happens every few seconds to make the audience laugh. The pacing is perfect. The episode never drags or rushes. Each day of practice gets just enough time to establish new problems without becoming repetitive. The fight scene happens at exactly the right moment, when tensions have built up enough to make it believable. Squidward's emotional breakdown comes after we've watched him suffer through 4 days of torture. The final performance arrives precisely when the audience most wants to see it. Band Geeks also benefits from being a Squidward-focused episode. SpongeBob is the main character of the show, but episodes centered on other characters often produce the best results. Squidward works wonderfully as a protagonist because his failures are funny, but his desires are relatable. Everyone has wanted recognition for their talents. Everyone has dealt with a rival who seems more successful. Everyone has tried to accomplish something difficult with inadequate resources. Squidward's struggle feels real despite the cartoon setting. The episode gives viewers exactly what they want without being predictable. We want Squidward to succeed, but we expect him to fail because that's what usually happens to him. The writers understand this expectation and use it to make the ending more satisfying. When the band actually sounds amazing, it's a genuine surprise that feels earned rather than cheap. The episode spent 10 minutes showing us why this should be impossible, which makes the impossible success even more triumphant. Band Geeks also demonstrates how SpongeBob could be sincere without being sappy. SpongeBob's speech about Squidward always being there for them is technically nonsense. Evelyn's son was saved by an actual fireman, and Larry was revived by an actual paramedic. Squidward had nothing to do with either situation, but SpongeBob's ability to inspire people despite making no logical sense is part of his charm. He believes so strongly in doing the right thing that he convinces others to believe it too. The speech works because it's emotionally true even while being factually absurd. The episode also features excellent voice acting from the entire cast. Roger Bumpass gives Squidward a perfect range of emotions from arrogance to despair to joy. Tom Kenny makes SpongeBob's enthusiasm infectious while also delivering that powerful singing voice at the end. Bill Fagerbaki gives Patrick the right mix of stupidity and innocence. Clancy Brown makes Mr. Krabs sound tough and cheap simultaneously. Every performance elevates the material. Band Geeks endures because it captures lightning in a bottle. Everything came together perfectly. The writing, animation, voice acting, music, pacing, and emotional beats all work in harmony. It's funny, heartwarming, surprising, and satisfying. It gives viewers memorable quotes, iconic images, and genuine feelings. It's the kind of episode that reminds people why they love cartoons in the first place. Over 20 years later, it remains the gold standard for what SpongeBob SquarePants can be at its very best. No wonder fans consider it not just the greatest SpongeBob episode, but one of the greatest cartoon episodes ever made. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Chocolate with Nuts, Door to Door, Chaos, and the legendary Chocolate Lady, the entrepreneurial adventure. Chocolate with Nuts is one of the most beloved episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 3 episode originally aired on the 1st of June 2002 and drew 4.33 million viewers. Fans consistently rank it among the greatest episodes ever made, competing with Band Geeks and Pizza Delivery for the top spot. The episode is endlessly quotable and features some of the most memorable characters and moments in the entire series. The magazine that started it all. The episode begins with SpongeBob sitting inside his own mailbox, humming happily while checking his watch. When the mailman arrives and opens the mailbox, SpongeBob suddenly pops out and cheerfully greets him. The mailman screams in terror, drops all his mail, and runs away. SpongeBob casually says goodbye and mentions he'll see him tomorrow, completely oblivious to the trauma he just caused. Patrick walks up and notices the mail has arrived. SpongeBob sorts through it, seeing multiple pieces addressed to Gary before finding a magazine. He's confused because he doesn't remember subscribing to Fancy Living Digest. When SpongeBob and Patrick look inside, they're amazed by what they see. SpongeBob marvels at the glossy depictions of a higher standard of living. One picture shows a rich person with a swimming pool inside their swimming pool. Patrick points excitedly at another picture, impressed that the man has shoes. Squidward suddenly appears and snatches the magazine away, accusing SpongeBob of stealing his mail and threatening to report him to authorities. SpongeBob asks Squidward how the people in the magazine got all their money. Squidward explains they're entrepreneurs who sell things to people. When SpongeBob asks what kind of things, Squidward irritably responds that they sell things people want to buy, then walks off telling them to keep their paws off his mail. Becoming entrepreneurs. SpongeBob excitedly tells Patrick they need to become entrepreneurs. Patrick nervously asks if that's going to hurt. SpongeBob tells Patrick to answer quickly without thinking. If he could have anything in the world right now, what would it be? Patrick sweats under the pressure and says he needs more time for thinking. SpongeBob clarifies he means something real, an item, something Patrick would pay for. Patrick suddenly appears behind SpongeBob and suggests a chocolate bar. SpongeBob declares it's a great idea and they'll become traveling chocolate bar salesmen. The scene cuts to them leaving the bargain mart carrying many chocolate bars. SpongeBob announces that Fancy Living is coming their way. Patrick excitedly tells people to make way for a couple of entrepreneurs, though he mispronounces it as entrepreneurs. The Chocolate Maniac. SpongeBob and Patrick approach their first house. SpongeBob tells Patrick this is their first step on the road to living fancy and to follow his lead. SpongeBob knocks on the door and a customer opens it. SpongeBob politely asks if he'd like to buy some chocolate. The customer asks if he said chocolate. Patrick confirms and asks if he wants it with or without nuts. What happens next is completely unexpected. The customer suddenly starts screaming chocolate over and over in an increasingly manic voice. SpongeBob and Patrick slowly back away before running off as the customer chases them while continuing to scream about chocolate. This character becomes a running gag throughout the episode, constantly pursuing SpongeBob and Patrick while obsessively yelling about chocolate. The con artist. SpongeBob tells Patrick the first guy didn't count and rings another doorbell. A customer answers and SpongeBob asks if he'd like to buy chocolate. The customer criticizes them as mediocre salesmen and points out that Patrick is carrying chocolate bars in his pants, which is the wrong way to carry merchandise. He asks if they want to be good salesmen, and both eagerly say yes. The customer shows them a bright orange bag, claiming no self-respecting candy bar salesman would be caught dead without one. SpongeBob asks what it is, and the customer explains it's a candy bar bag, specially designed to cradle each chocolate bar in velvet-lined comfort. When SpongeBob tries to touch it, the customer pulls it away and starts walking inside, saying they probably don't need these bags. SpongeBob and Patrick desperately insist they need them. The scene cuts to the customer counting money while SpongeBob and Patrick walk away with armfuls of bags. After they leave, the customer calls them suckers and laughs. SpongeBob and Patrick sing about fancy living as they walk to the next house. When they ring the doorbell, the same customer answers. SpongeBob becomes suspicious, asking if he's the same guy who sold them the bags. The customer claims he doesn't recall but says they're too smart to be without his patented candy bar bag carrying bags. Patrick immediately wants to buy 20, lost in the bags. SpongeBob knocks on another door and a nice older woman answers. SpongeBob says they're selling chocolate bars and asks if she'd like to buy one. She says that sounds heavenly and she'll take one. SpongeBob opens a bag but finds another bag inside. He keeps pulling out more bags while Patrick unzips and zips his pants repeatedly. SpongeBob insists he knows the chocolate is in there somewhere. The woman looks at her watch and says she doesn't have time for this, going back inside. SpongeBob finally pulls out a chocolate bar and turns to give it to the nice lady, but sees the chocolate maniac still screaming and chasing them. The maniac pursues SpongeBob and Patrick as chocolate bars fly everywhere. New tactics. After this disaster, SpongeBob and Patrick sit in a diner discussing their lack of success. They need a new approach and tactic. Patrick suggests getting naked, but SpongeBob says to save that for when they're selling real estate. SpongeBob asks what the reason was that they bought those bags. Patrick remembers the man said they were mediocre, which made them feel special. SpongeBob realizes they need to try being nice and make customers feel good. Patrick knocks on a door, and when the customer answers, Patrick simply says, "I love you." A harp plays as the customer stares at them before slamming the door in disgust, accompanied by a tuba sound. SpongeBob says Patrick laid it on too thick and rings the doorbell himself. When the customer opens the door again and begs them to go away, SpongeBob asks how he's doing. The customer responds by asking SpongeBob the same question. SpongeBob asks if he wants to buy chocolate. Patrick excitedly says they've got him now. But the customer explains that chocolate has sugar and sugar turns to bubbling fat. Patrick's belly starts bubbling and he giggles, saying it tickles. The customer shows them a picture of himself being severely overweight at age 13, saying he and chocolate no longer associate. He offers to let them keep the picture for $5. Patrick wants to buy 10. Focus problems. SpongeBob walks sadly, saying they haven't sold one chocolate bar and he has a feeling they're too easily distracted. Patrick is shown staring at the pictures he bought. SpongeBob raises his fist and suggests they make a pact to stay focused at the next house. Patrick removes the pictures from his face and asks what SpongeBob said. SpongeBob holds out his hand to shake on it, but Patrick looks confused and asks if he said something. At the next house, SpongeBob reminds Patrick to focus. A customer answers the door, and SpongeBob says they're selling chocolate bars. Patrick somehow moves right up to the customer, with his eyes going in and out. The customer asks why Patrick is staring at him. Patrick responds that he's focusing. The customer freaks out and tells Patrick to back up, slamming the door on Patrick's eyes. Patrick's eyes move around inside the house as he comments that it's a nice place, stretching the truth. SpongeBob says he can't understand what they're doing wrong. Patrick says he can't understand anything. SpongeBob notes there must be something about selling they're not getting, since other people succeed at it. He points to a billboard advertising barnacle chips as delicious. SpongeBob insists they're not delicious, but Patrick cryptically says they are depending on how he uses them. SpongeBob notes they sell millions of bags daily. Patrick suggests maybe if the company didn't stretch the truth, they wouldn't sell as many. SpongeBob happily realizes that's the solution. They need to stretch the truth. The chocolate maniac appears again, screaming, and they run to another house. SpongeBob explains they'll work as a team. He'll warm up the customer, and Patrick will come in for the kill. A young woman answers the door, and SpongeBob greets her, winking at Patrick. He says they're selling chocolate and asks if her mother is home. The woman calls for her mom, the elderly mother. What emerges is one of the most memorable characters in SpongeBob history. An extremely elderly woman named Baby Prunes enters in a wheelchair, appearing so old she's basically just a head and spine. She asks what all the yelling is about and complains that her daughter can't wait for her to die. The daughter explains they're selling chocolate. A hilarious exchange follows where Baby Prunes keeps asking what they're selling because she can't hear. The daughter repeatedly shouts, "Chocolates," getting louder each time until Baby Prunes finally understands. She reminisces about when chocolate was first invented, calling it sweet. Then she declares she always hated it. SpongeBob sweats nervously and starts to explain that this chocolate isn't for eating. Patrick suddenly appears from the top of the screen and announces that you rub it on your skin and it makes you live forever. Baby Prunes asks if it really makes you live forever and says she'll take one, while her daughter repeatedly says no and slaps her own face in frustration. Outside, the daughter pays SpongeBob $1. From inside, Baby Prunes yells for her lazy daughter Mary to start rubbing her with the chocolate. Mary glares at SpongeBob and Patrick angrily tells them she hates them and slams the door. SpongeBob happily announces that if they keep exaggerating the truth, they'll be fancy living in no time. Patrick raises his fist and cheers for lying. A montage of lies. The episode shows a rapid series of sales where SpongeBob and Patrick make increasingly ridiculous claims. SpongeBob tells one customer the chocolate will make his hair grow, and the customer excitedly says his wife is trying to grow a beard. SpongeBob claims the chocolate will make people sound smart, and a customer with a southern accent says he'll take 20. Patrick tells someone it'll keep his face from getting uglier, and the customer says it's just in time. The lies escalate further. They claim the chocolate will make you fly, help you fall in love, bring world peace, let you walk through walls, and even let you rule the world. Eventually, SpongeBob and Patrick appear wrapped in casts, planning to use sympathy to sell chocolate, the glass bones, and paper skin. SpongeBob and Patrick approach a house wrapped in casts. When the customer opens the door, SpongeBob says they're selling chocolate and they need an operation. The customer, who is completely covered in a full body cast, says it's a small world and asks what's wrong with them. SpongeBob nervously claims they have head trauma and eternal bleeding. The customer responds that some guys have all the luck. A violin begins playing as he delivers one of the most famous monologues in SpongeBob history. He explains he was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning he breaks his legs, and every afternoon he breaks his arms. At night he lies awake in agony until his heart attacks put him to sleep. SpongeBob and Patrick both look devastated, with tears running down SpongeBob's face. The wires holding the customer up suddenly snap, and he falls down his steps with glass-breaking sounds as he hits each one. He lands at the bottom and says, "Ow." SpongeBob tells Patrick they need to help him immediately. They carefully carry him inside, though Patrick drops his head with another glass-breaking sound. SpongeBob asks if there's anything they can do to help. The customer explains his medical bills are extremely high, but he's able to keep himself alive by selling chocolate bars. He gestures to a massive stack of chocolate bar boxes. The scene cuts to him looking out his window as SpongeBob and Patrick walk away. He says they're such nice boys, then unzips his costume to reveal he's the same con artist from earlier. He laughs about conning a couple of Class A suckers. The final sale. On the street, SpongeBob tells Patrick that while it's great they helped that guy, there's nobody left in town to sell chocolate to. He trips on a rock and falls with a box landing flat on his face. He says they should face it, they're failures. Patrick agrees he can live with that and sits on SpongeBob's box. SpongeBob suggests they change their names to Why and Bother. The chocolate maniac suddenly appears behind them, his screaming knocking them over. SpongeBob and Patrick both babble in fear, begging him not to hurt them and to have mercy. The maniac laughs manically and says he's been trying to catch them all day. Now that he has them where he wants them, he returns to his normal voice and says he'd like to buy all their chocolate, holding up a large amount of cash. SpongeBob and Patrick look shocked as chocolate bars fall out of Patrick's shorts. They start melting from happiness as SpongeBob thanks him for his patronage. This twist ending reveals the chocolate maniac wasn't dangerous at all. He was just an extremely enthusiastic customer who desperately wanted to buy their chocolate the entire time. Living fancy. Patrick pushes a wheelbarrow full of cash and asks if they're living the fancy life yet. SpongeBob pops out of the money and says not yet, because first they need to spend it all. Patrick asks what they'll spend it on, and SpongeBob pauses to think. The final scene shows a fancy restaurant at night with a boat and a bottle. Inside, Squidward asks for a table for one, saying it's his only night to be fancy. The host apologizes and explains the entire restaurant has been rented by a private party. Squidward is shocked and asks who could afford to rent out the whole place. The host says it's a couple of rich entrepreneurs and their dates. The camera reveals SpongeBob and Patrick sitting at a table with Mary and Baby Prunes. SpongeBob asks the two ladies how long they've known each other. Baby Prunes asks what he said, unable to hear him. The screen fades to black, ending the episode with Squidward unable to enjoy his fancy night, while SpongeBob and Patrick achieved their goal of fancy living. Why? This episode endures. Chocolate with Nuts works because it takes a simple premise and fills it with memorable characters and escalating absurdity. The structure follows SpongeBob and Patrick's journey from optimistic beginners to failures to accidental successes. Every attempt to sell chocolate goes wrong in a different way, keeping the episode fresh throughout its runtime. The con artist character provides a recurring antagonist who keeps taking advantage of their naivety. The chocolate maniac creates tension and serves as a running gag before the final twist reveals his true intentions. Baby Prunes and her daughter Mary became instant fan favorites with their shouting exchange about chocolate. The glass bones and paper skin monologue is endlessly quoted and parodied. The episode also satirizes sales tactics and entrepreneurship. SpongeBob and Patrick try different approaches, being professional, being nice, flattering customers, focusing intensely, and finally, lying. The fact that stretching the truth is what actually works provides social commentary while remaining funny. The episode suggests that successful salespeople often exaggerate or make false claims. The ending perfectly caps the story. After all their struggles and failures, SpongeBob and Patrick succeed not through skill, but through luck. The customer they feared most turns out to be their biggest sale. They achieve their dream of fancy living by taking their dates to the same restaurant Squidward wanted to visit, denying him his one fancy night. The episode gives SpongeBob and Patrick a happy ending while giving Squidward another disappointment. Chocolate with Nuts demonstrates why early SpongeBob was so successful. The writing is sharp with constant jokes and memorable lines. The characters behave consistently while getting into absurd situations. The pacing moves quickly without feeling rushed. Every scene serves the story while also being entertaining on its own. The episode balances silly humor with clever satire and memorable character moments. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most beloved and frequently quoted episodes in the entire series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Rock Bottom, SpongeBob's Nightmare in the Aphotic Zone. Rock Bottom is one of the most memorable and unsettling episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This season 1 episode originally aired on the 15th of March 2000 and drew 3.08 million viewers. The episode stands out for its darker tone, creative animation, and the genuine sense of dread it creates. Many fans consider it one of the scariest SpongeBob episodes ever made, despite being aimed at children. A fun day gone wrong. The episode begins at Glove World, an amusement park themed entirely around gloves. SpongeBob and Patrick have just finished another fun day and are waiting for the bus home. SpongeBob struggles to board because he's holding a glove-shaped balloon. The bus driver asks for 50 cents, and SpongeBob searches his pockets while the balloon keeps hitting the driver in the head every time he turns around. SpongeBob asks Patrick if he has change, but Patrick says no. The annoyed bus driver finally tells SpongeBob to just take his seat. SpongeBob sits next to Patrick, and they excitedly show each other what they got at Glove World. SpongeBob has a glove light that he puts inside his head to make his eyes flash. Patrick has gloves for his glove action figure. As they play, Patrick looks out the window and sees a sign saying they're leaving Bikini Bottom. He asks SpongeBob where leaving Bikini Bottom is, misreading the sign. SpongeBob realizes with horror that they're on the wrong bus. The descent into rock bottom. The bus suddenly drives down a 90-degree angle steep road. SpongeBob and Patrick scream as they fly backward and hit the back of the bus, appearing completely flattened. SpongeBob slowly walks forward, his face getting distorted from the intense pressure. His pants rip off and fly at Patrick, who ducks. Then SpongeBob's underwear hits Patrick in the face. The bus comes to an immediate stop at a strange-looking bus stop. SpongeBob and Patrick fly forward and smash into the windshield along with the balloon, which hits the bus driver. They all peel off together, and SpongeBob and Patrick get kicked out. SpongeBob protests that they need to get back to Bikini Bottom, but the bus driver simply hands him the balloon and drives away. Patrick asks what this place is. SpongeBob reads a sign that says Rock Bottom. He notes how weird everything is, even picking up some soil that looks different. The soil suddenly speaks, asking SpongeBob to put him down while making a raspberry sound between words. SpongeBob shakes him off in shock. This raspberry sound becomes a defining characteristic of Rock Bottom residents, who make the noise between every few words they speak. Patrick's departure. Patrick expresses his fear, saying the place is dark and scary and he wants to go home. He points to bathroom doors that have a question mark on one and an upside-down question mark on the other, saying he can't tell them apart. SpongeBob suggests they wait for someone to come out so they'll know which is which. A creature exits one bathroom, then another exits the other bathroom, then 3 more exit the first bathroom. Patrick's eyes become bloodshot and he sweats profusely, shaking in fear and insisting he still can't read the sign and wants to go home. SpongeBob tells Patrick to wait for the bus and call him when it comes, while he goes to get a bus schedule. As SpongeBob walks away, commenting on how creepy the place is, he sees the bus driving by with Patrick's head sticking out the window. Patrick says the bus is here. SpongeBob runs after it but can't catch up. Patrick yells for SpongeBob as the bus drives up the 90-degree angle road. SpongeBob tries running up the road but falls down repeatedly. SpongeBob puts on a disguise to look like his grandpa SquarePants and says his grandfather was right about not running for a bus, especially one going up at a 90-degree angle. He decides to wait for the next one, now completely alone in Rock Bottom. Missing bus after bus. SpongeBob stands at the bus stop holding his balloon, urging the bus to come because he needs to get home and feed Gary. He notices his shoe is untied and lets go of the balloon to tie it. While bent over tying his shoe using the elaborate method of going over, under, through the loop, and through the barrel, a bus drives up and leaves without him. He groans at missing it. Later, the wind blows his glove hat to the side. When he puts it back, the wind blows his balloon away. SpongeBob chases after the balloon, jumping to try to catch it. While he's away from the stop, another bus drives up and leaves. SpongeBob throws down his hat in frustration and asks a Rock Bottom resident named Bert for help. Bert makes raspberry sounds and runs after the balloon instead of helping. SpongeBob tries to explain he doesn't need the balloon. He needs to know when the next bus comes. Another bus drives up and leaves while he's talking. SpongeBob walks back to the bus stop and declares he won't leave the spot no matter what. His stomach growls. He remembers his glove candy dispenser from Glove World. He squeezes out 6 tiny glove candies onto his tongue, but spits them out because they're glove flavored. Then he notices a candy machine across the road with kelp nougat crunch. His stomach growls again. The candy machine torment. SpongeBob checks both sides of the road and insists he won't leave the spot no matter what. But his stomach growls a third time, and he decides he'll only be gone a second. As he runs to the machine, a bus drives up and leaves. SpongeBob gets increasingly frustrated as he tries multiple strategies to get candy while watching for the bus. He takes a few steps, checks for the bus, takes more steps, checks again. He gets to the machine and takes out a quarter. Before inserting it, he checks for the bus. There's no bus, so he puts in the quarter, but then a bus appears and drives off. He checks left down the road and sprints across to push buttons on the machine. The candy slowly comes down. A bus drives up and leaves while he's waiting. SpongeBob reaches for the candy, but a bus appears. Every time he reaches for it, the bus moves forward. When he pulls his arm away, the bus drives backward. He decides to abandon the candy and run after the bus, but it drives off before he can get there. Another Rock Bottom resident comes up and takes the candy SpongeBob paid for. 3 more buses drive by while he's at the candy machine, so he runs back and shakes the bus sign angrily, declaring no more Mr. Nice Guy. Desperate schemes. SpongeBob tries creating a cardboard cutout of himself at the candy machine while he waits at the bus stop. A bus drives up but drives off after noticing the cutout. SpongeBob morphs himself into a bus stop bench. A bus drives up but immediately drives off after recognizing the SpongeBob bench. He morphs back to normal in frustration. SpongeBob walks into the bus station and declares he's getting to the bottom of this right now. He wants a bus to Bikini Bottom and announces he's first in line, but he sees someone already standing behind him in line. He says okay, he's second. Then he sees another person and says third is good. Then another person, so fourth isn't bad. The scene transitions to show SpongeBob at the very end of an enormous line as the 329th person. The endless wait. SpongeBob announces he's 329th in line and nobody should forget it. The Rock Bottom resident in front of him inflates like a balloon and spits out a giant egg onto SpongeBob's head with the number 329 on it, then makes a raspberry sound. The window attendant calls for the next person. SpongeBob notes, at least the line is moving. Everyone steps forward, but then the egg hatches 3 baby fish that jump in front of SpongeBob, keeping him at position 329. He becomes extremely furious, hides inside his clothes, and goes ballistic before coming out. Everyone stares at him, then turns around. Time passes quickly as the attendant keeps calling next. SpongeBob falls asleep standing up. When the attendant calls next again, SpongeBob wakes up and realizes he's finally at the front. He runs to the window and asks when the next bus to Bikini Bottom is. The attendant asks what he said, making a raspberry sound. SpongeBob repeats himself. The attendant reveals himself and says he can't understand SpongeBob's accent, making raspberry sounds between words. SpongeBob tries speaking with raspberries between his words, asking about the next bus to Bikini Bottom with a long raspberry at the end. The attendant finally understands and says the next bus leaves in 5 seconds. The bus immediately drives away. The attendant tells SpongeBob tough luck, saying that was the last bus until morning. SpongeBob protests with raspberries, but the attendant puts up a closed sign and wishes him good night. Alone in advanced darkness, SpongeBob demands the attendant come back and give him a bus to Bikini Bottom right now, making raspberry sounds. He declares he's not leaving this spot until then. The lights turn off. SpongeBob laughs nervously and says he'll be right here in the dark, by himself, with no one around. But he remembers his glove light and turns it on, feeling better. The glove light immediately buzzes and stops working. After a pause, SpongeBob comments that this isn't average everyday darkness. This is advanced darkness. He closes his eyes and notes that if he keeps them closed, it doesn't seem so dark. But then he hears a raspberry sound in the distance. He opens his eyes and asks who's there. SpongeBob walks down the road, saying he guesses that Spot will be there tomorrow and he better just keep walking. He hears another raspberry and decides running is better. He hears another raspberry and starts sprinting. He runs into the 90-degree angle road and sits down with scallops flying around his head, saying he's sitting and bleeding. He hears noises and raspberries getting closer. He warns whatever is making the sound not to come closer. He announces he's a sponge. The balloon rescue. A red light shines around SpongeBob. It's Bert, the rock bottom resident from earlier. Bert ties SpongeBob's balloon to his wrist. SpongeBob says that solves his balloon problem, but he has a bigger problem. He's stuck and needs to catch a bus home. He asks if Bert understands, but assumes he doesn't. Bert starts blowing the balloon bigger. SpongeBob tries speaking with raspberries, saying the balloon has enough air and thanking him. He makes a few more raspberries as he floats up into the air. SpongeBob finally understands balloon travel. He thanks Bert with raspberries. Bert responds in a normal voice without any raspberries, saying, "You're welcome." This reveals that Bert could understand and speak normally the entire time. SpongeBob continues floating while leaving rock bottom. He floats past a sign saying he's entering rock bottom on his way up. He passes over downtown Bikini Bottom and floats toward his home, saying he's home at last. The balloon pops. The final shot shows Patrick riding another bus down to rock bottom, saying he's coming back for SpongeBob. The bus passes by their houses as the episode ends. Why rock bottom terrifies viewers. Rock Bottom works as a horror episode because it taps into universal fears. Being stranded in a strange place where you don't understand the language or customs is genuinely frightening. The constant missed buses create mounting frustration and helplessness. The darkness and isolation amplify the dread. The episode makes children feel SpongeBob's fear without being gratuitously scary. The animation style changes in Rock Bottom. Everything looks darker and more surreal. The residents have bizarre designs with anglerfish features like glowing lures. The raspberry sounds between words create an alien communication barrier. The 90-degree vertical roads defy physics. The upside-down question mark on the bathroom door adds to the disorientation. Every detail reinforces that SpongeBob is somewhere completely foreign. The episode's pacing builds tension expertly. Each failed attempt to catch the bus makes SpongeBob more desperate. The candy machine sequence turns a simple task into psychological torture. The reveal that he's 329th in line crushes any remaining hope. By the time the lights go out and SpongeBob is truly alone, the audience feels his isolation. Rock Bottom also demonstrates excellent visual comedy. SpongeBob's balloon repeatedly hitting the bus driver establishes a running gag. The distorted faces as the bus descends create striking images. The cardboard cutout scheme and bench transformation show SpongeBob's desperation through cartoon logic. The egg with 329 on it that hatches more people is absurdist humor at its finest. The ending provides relief and a twist. Bert rescuing SpongeBob with balloon travel is both ridiculous and touching. The reveal that Bert speaks normally without raspberries surprises viewers who assumed all Rock Bottom residents talked that way. Patrick going back to rescue SpongeBob after he's already escaped is perfectly in character and provides a final joke. Rock Bottom endures because it creates genuine atmosphere and emotion. The episode makes viewers feel uncomfortable and anxious alongside SpongeBob. It proves the show could tackle darker themes while remaining appropriate for children. The unique setting, creative design, and building tension make it unforgettable. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most discussed and analyzed SpongeBob episodes, proof that children's cartoons can be genuinely unsettling when done right. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the camping episode, Sea Bears, Circles, and the Campfire Songs. The camping episode is one of the most beloved episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This season 3 episode originally aired on the 3rd of April 2004 and drew an impressive 5.4 million viewers, making it one of the highest rated episodes of the series. Fans consistently rank it among the greatest episodes ever made, particularly for its absurd humor, memorable song, and the introduction of the sea bear. Squidward's perfect weekend. The episode begins at nightfall with Squidward preparing for bed in his nightgown, carrying a book and cup of tea. He sighs with relief, announcing that the weekend is finally here. But this isn't just any weekend. He gestures to his dance quarterly calendar on the wall and explains that this is the weekend SpongeBob and Patrick go camping. He imagines how great it would be if they got lost in the woods and never came back. In Squidward's thought bubble, SpongeBob and Patrick are hiking through dark woods with camping gear on their backs. An owl hoots, and they look worried. SpongeBob tells Patrick he's scared. Squidward laughs at this fantasy and jumps into bed, saying he's waited a long time for this. A soft bed, warm tea, a good book, and 2 whole days with no SpongeBob. He imitates SpongeBob's laugh and goofy face. Then Squidward hears SpongeBob's actual laugh outside. He goes out to investigate and finds SpongeBob and Patrick in a tent with sleeping bags, reading books, and laughing. Squidward asks if they're supposed to be camping. SpongeBob says they are camping. Squidward points out that camping doesn't count if they're 10 feet from SpongeBob's house. The camping spirit. SpongeBob explains that it doesn't matter where you are as long as you're outdoors. While soft city folk are safe in their beds reading books, he and Patrick are out here pitting themselves against the formidable forces of nature. He asks if Squidward wants to join them. Squidward says no and tells them to have fun inside. SpongeBob and Patrick pull out their book and flashlight and begin reading and giggling. Squidward pops back into the tent and asks what SpongeBob means by "have fun inside." SpongeBob just repeats the phrase and says he'll see Squidward tomorrow. Squidward leaves, but then enters the tent again and accuses SpongeBob of being sneaky. Squidward realizes what's happening. They're saying he can't take it. They're calling him soft. Squidward becomes increasingly agitated, insisting that SpongeBob's little "have fun inside" challenge won't make him go camping with them. He declares there's no way he's going to sit out there all night with 2 losers and tells them to get used to it. He exits the tent. SpongeBob calmly says okay and tells him to have fun inside. Squidward immediately pokes his head back in and shouts that he's in, blowing SpongeBob and Patrick backward with his loud voice. He'll show them camping. Squidward's failed technology. SpongeBob excitedly tells Patrick that Squidward is going to camp with them. They climb out of the tent and giggle. Squidward emerges from his house with an enormous camping backpack. He starts to say they'll see how a real outdoorsman does it, but immediately falls face forward, crushed by the weight of the backpack. He climbs out and pulls a pouch from the backpack, announcing his remote-controlled, self-assembling tent. SpongeBob takes out binoculars while Patrick puts on half-moon glasses and holds a notepad. Squidward tosses the pouch in the air and presses the remote, but the power fizzles and the tent appears unassembled in a pile on the ground. SpongeBob says that was great, but asks how Squidward gets inside. Patrick notes it looks crushy. Squidward angrily explains it isn't put up yet. He struggles with the tent and accidentally rips it. SpongeBob treats this as intentional customization. Patrick calls it genius. Squidward beats the tent with a wooden stick. SpongeBob says he's tenderizing the ground. Patrick enthusiastically agrees. SpongeBob tells Patrick to write that down. Patrick appears to be taking notes, but his notepad just shows a tic-tac-toe game in progress. Squidward gives the pile a huge kick and it automatically becomes an assembled tent. He says, voila. But the tent immediately collapses back to pile form. Squidward pushes it away and announces that nothing could compare to lying under the stars. He takes a blanket and places it on the ground. SpongeBob and Patrick applaud wildly. Marshmallows and astronauts. Squidward says he's worked up an appetite as big as all outdoors, and it's time for food. He assumes SpongeBob and Patrick are going to stew up twigs and rocks. SpongeBob laughs and says they have something better, marshmallows. He pulls out a Marsh King bag and pops one in his mouth, noting they're just like astronauts eat. Patrick has a round fishbowl over his head like an astronaut helmet. He imitates static noise and calls SpongeBob, asking if he reads him. SpongeBob also has a helmet and imitates static, saying he reads Patrick. Patrick says through static that he likes going. SpongeBob says through static that he does too. They begin repeatedly exchanging static noises while Squidward looks annoyed. SpongeBob tells Patrick to help himself and holds out the bag. Patrick takes a marshmallow and crams it into his mouth, smashing his helmet. He announces that the deliciousness has landed. Squidward says they can eat marshmallows while he has a can of Swedish barnacle balls just as soon as he gets his can opener. SpongeBob asks if Squidward didn't bring a can opener when he hiked out here. Squidward asks why he would bother since they're 10 feet from his house. SpongeBob says this is the wilderness and it doesn't fit the camping spirit. Patrick calls Squidward pretty weenie. Squidward gives in and asks for a marshmallow. The campfire song. Squidward begins toasting his marshmallow lightly. Patrick sets his on fire and tries to blow on it, but the marshmallow flies off and hits Squidward in the face. Patrick gets another marshmallow and repeats this twice more. After dodging the third one, Squidward laughs, but the marshmallow has a boomerang effect and hits him in the back of the head. Squidward asks what else they do for fun besides spitting molten food at him. SpongeBob explains that after a long day of camping, it's nice to unwind with a relaxing campfire song. He calls this one the campfire song. He begins singing about gathering around the campfire to sing their campfire song, spelling out CAMPFIRESONG. The song gets faster and faster as SpongeBob spells out the letters repeatedly. Patrick tries to keep up but falls behind, eventually just playing drums near the end. Squidward sits silently, refusing to participate. At the end, SpongeBob smashes his ukulele like a guitar at a rock show, and Patrick does the same with his drum set. They both shout, "Oh yeah." SpongeBob asks if that wasn't relaxing. Squidward says no and pulls out his clarinet, claiming his music is relaxing. He begins playing Kumbaya terribly. SpongeBob and Patrick look alarmed. SpongeBob grabs a marshmallow and loads it into a slingshot, saying he'll save Squidward. The marshmallow shoots up Squidward's clarinet and sticks in his throat. SpongeBob comes over asking if he's alright and telling him to chew and swallow. The sea bear legend. Squidward angrily asks if SpongeBob thinks this is better, explaining he was fine until SpongeBob launched junk food into his windpipe. SpongeBob says he had to because it's too dangerous to play clarinet badly in the wilderness. It might attract a sea bear. Squidward asks in a cautious tone if SpongeBob means the ones that don't exist. SpongeBob asks what he's saying. Squidward insists there's no such thing and they're just a myth. SpongeBob insists sea bears are real and says so in the Bikini Bottom Inquirer. He holds up a cheesy tabloid newspaper. Squidward reads the cover story, "I Married a Sea Bear." Patrick adds that Fake Science Monthly also confirms it. Squidward reads, "Sea bears and fairy tales are real." He calls this the stupidest thing he's ever heard. Patrick says maybe it is stupid, but it's also dumb. SpongeBob says Patrick is right and sea bears are no laughing matter. He launches into an absurdly long story about how he once met a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy, repeating this phrase about 15 times, who knew a guy's cousin. Squidward sarcastically says SpongeBob is right and he should be more careful. He asks SpongeBob to tell him everything he shouldn't do to keep sea bears away. The rules of sea bear safety. SpongeBob explains the rules eagerly. First, don't play the clarinet. Second, never wave your flashlight back and forth really fast. Patrick adds that flashlights are their natural prey. Third, don't stomp around because they take that as a challenge. Fourth, don't eat cheese. Squidward asks if that's sliced or cubed. SpongeBob whispers with Patrick and says cubed is bad, but sliced is fine. 5th, never wear a sombrero in a goofy fashion. 6th, don't wear clown shoes. 7th, don't wear a hoop skirt. And finally, never ever screech like a chimpanzee. Squidward acts amazed at how many things can set a sea bear off. SpongeBob and Patrick huddle together, shuddering, saying sea bears are horrible. Squidward says he suddenly has the sense they're all in danger. They ask why. Squidward says he doesn't know, just a feeling. He runs off and returns with a flashlight, clown shoes, hoop skirt, sombrero, and tray full of cube cheese. A diabolical look is on his face. SpongeBob says no in horror. Squidward says yes. SpongeBob repeats no. Squidward begins making chimpanzee noises. SpongeBob and Patrick beg him not to, but Squidward continues hooting, stomping, and waving the flashlight around. Patrick asks SpongeBob what they're going to do since a sea bear is sure to come. SpongeBob tells him not to worry and draws an anti-sea bear circle in the dirt around himself and Patrick using a stick. The sea bear attack. Patrick says that's good thinking and holds up another issue of Fake Science Monthly, noting all the experts say it's the only defense against a sea bear attack. Squidward finishes screeching and laughs, calling them gullible. He did everything that attracts a sea bear and nothing happened. If sea bears really exist, why didn't one show up? SpongeBob suggests maybe it's because Squidward isn't wearing his sombrero in a goofy fashion. Squidward sarcastically apologizes for being silly and asks if he means like this. He tilts his sombrero to the right while laughing. Something off-screen takes the hat and turns it upside down instead. The camera zooms out to reveal an angry sea bear that inverted the sombrero. It looks like a giant fish with the head of a bear and claws on its fins. SpongeBob says no, like that. Squidward sees the growling sea bear and screams. It roars and chases him, then begins mauling him off-screen. SpongeBob and Patrick remain huddled safely inside their anti-sea bear circle. SpongeBob asks if Squidward is okay. Squidward, looking bruised and battered, says no. SpongeBob tells him to quickly jump inside the circle before the bear comes back. Patrick moves the circle to their current position and says sea bears often attack more than once. Squidward insists a dirt circle won't stop that monster and he's running for his life. SpongeBob and Patrick both shout no. The sea bear rushes back and attacks Squidward again. SpongeBob warns him not to run because sea bears hate that. Squidward thanks him for the tip and says he'll just limp home. They shout no again. The sea bear attacks for a 3rd time. SpongeBob explains they hate limping more than running. Squidward starts to say he'll just have to do something else, but the sea bear attacks for a 4th time. SpongeBob says he should have warned Squidward about crawling. The sea bear attacks yet again. Squidward asks what he did that time. SpongeBob says he doesn't know, maybe the bear just doesn't like him. Patrick suggests pretending to be somebody else. SpongeBob tosses Squidward the stick and tells him to draw a circle. Squidward tries, but the sea bear attacks anyway. SpongeBob explains that was an oval, and it has to be a circle. The circle that works. Squidward runs and climbs on top of SpongeBob and Patrick, who are still sitting in their circle. The sea bear approaches Squidward but notices the circle below. It snarls and points a threatening claw at him before leaving. Squidward celebrates that it worked and they saved his life. All 3 cheer together. SpongeBob says he's glad it was just a sea bear because this circle would never hold back a sea rhinoceros. Squidward asks what attracts them. Patrick explains it's the sound of a sea bear attack. A sea rhinoceros appears, snorting. It looks even more fearsome than the sea bear. SpongeBob says it's a good thing they're all wearing their anti-sea rhinoceros undergarments. He asks if Squidward is wearing his. Squidward looks confused and says, "Huh?" The episode ends with the implication that Squidward is about to be attacked again. Why this episode endures. The camping episode works because it takes an absurd premise and commits to it completely. The idea that SpongeBob and Patrick are camping 10 feet from home is funny on its own. Squidward's inability to resist their challenge despite having no reason to camp makes perfect sense for his character. He can't stand the idea that someone thinks he's soft. The campfire song became instantly iconic. The rapid-fire spelling and acceleration of the song is genuinely impressive. Voice actor Tom Kenny sang it that fast without any audio editing or speed tricks. Patrick's inability to keep up and eventual switch to drums provides the perfect comedic counterpoint. The rock ending with smashed instruments elevates it further. The sea bear concept is brilliantly absurd. The increasingly ridiculous list of things that attract sea bears builds comedy through escalation. Cubed cheese attracts them, but sliced cheese doesn't. Wearing a sombrero is fine unless you wear it in a goofy fashion. Playing clarinet badly brings them around. The rules make no sense, which is exactly the point. Squidward deliberately doing everything that attracts a sea bear shows his arrogance and stubbornness. He's so convinced sea bears don't exist that he'll mock SpongeBob and Patrick by doing all the forbidden things. When the sea bear actually appears, it validates everything SpongeBob said while punishing Squidward's mockery. The anti-sea bear circle is the perfect punchline. A simple circle drawn in dirt provides complete protection from a vicious monster. The episode establishes this rule through Patrick's fake science magazine, making it part of the world's logic. When Squidward refuses to believe it and tries running, limping, and crawling instead, each attempt results in another attack. His desperate attempt to draw a circle fails because he draws an oval. When he finally gets inside the circle, it works perfectly. The sea rhinoceros ending provides one final joke. Just when Squidward thinks he's safe, SpongeBob mentions an even more dangerous creature. The fact that it's attracted by the sound of a sea bear attack means Squidward caused it himself. The reveal that SpongeBob and Patrick are wearing anti-sea rhinoceros undergarments while Squidward isn't sets up one more attack. The camping episode demonstrates why early SpongeBob succeeded. The writing is sharp with constant jokes. The characters behave consistently while getting into absurd situations. The pacing builds from the simple camping setup to the increasingly ridiculous sea bear rules to the chaotic attacks. Every element serves both the comedy and the story. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most quoted and beloved episodes in the entire series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Sailor Mouth, the 13 bad words censored by dolphins. Sailor Mouth is one of the most memorable and controversial episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 2 episode originally aired on the 21st of September 2001 and drew 2.88 million viewers. The episode tackles the subject of profanity in a clever way that works for both children and adults, using creative sound effects to censor the bad words while making the humor accessible to all ages. Taking out the trash. The episode begins at the Krusty Krab during nighttime. Mr. Krabs stands near the door and sighs, saying it's the worst time of day once again. Closing time. He cringes as he changes the sign from open to closed. SpongeBob says he'll see Mr. Krabs in the morning, but Mr. Krabs grabs him by the face and pulls him back inside. He tells SpongeBob to take that pile of filth out with him. Squidward holds up a trash bag with flies buzzing around it. SpongeBob gasps and says Mr. Krabs shouldn't talk about Squidward like that. Squidward clarifies he means the actual filth and drops the bag on the floor. SpongeBob takes the trash outside while singing about taking out the trash. He throws the bags in the dumpster and notices writing on it. He reads the graffiti aloud, calling it dumpster writing and the voice of the people. He reads various messages, up with bubbles, down with air, which makes him laugh. Nematodes are people too, which also makes him laugh. He finds one somebody didn't finish, Squidward smells. SpongeBob writes the word good after smells and laughs. Then he finds another message, Krabs is a, followed by a word he doesn't know. When he says it, a dolphin chirp sound censors the word. Sentence enhancers. A garbage man picking up trash hears SpongeBob and asks in disgust if he kisses his mother with that mouth. SpongeBob says, "Well, sometimes, but not recently." Patrick appears and greets both the garbage man and SpongeBob. SpongeBob asks Patrick if he knows what the word means. Patrick reads crabs and asks if that's the red sweaty guy SpongeBob works for. SpongeBob clarifies he means the other word. Patrick says the censored word and claims he knows what it means. He calls it a sentence enhancer. SpongeBob asks what that is. Patrick explains you use them when you want to talk fancy. You just sprinkle it over anything you say, and you've got yourself a spicy sentence sandwich. SpongeBob understands and tries it himself. He greets Patrick and says it's a lovely censored day they're having. Patrick agrees, saying the censored day is particularly censored lovely. They continue using the word while getting increasingly excited. SpongeBob notes his lips are tingling from the spiciness of the conversation. Patrick says his are too. They laugh together. SpongeBob says it tingles when he laughs. Shocking, the customers. The next day, SpongeBob walks into the Krusty Krab and greets customers, saying it's a nice censored day. All the customers stop eating and stare in shock. One customer gasps and asks if he just said that word. A pirate confirms he did. SpongeBob greets Patrick and asks how censored he is. Patrick, sitting at a table, says he's pretty censored good. Old Man Jenkins complains he thought this was a restaurant, not a gutter mouth convention. SpongeBob taps the microphone and announces today's special is a censored Krabby Patty, served in a greasy censored sauce and grilled to censored perfection. The customers remain shocked. One drops his patty, another stops chewing, and his food floats in midair. A mother octopus tries covering her children's ears but doesn't have enough tentacles for the last one, so she dumps soda on his head. SpongeBob adds that customers should ask them to censor the fries and it will be their censored pleasure. A giant ear pops out of Squidward's head when he hears this through the intercom. Customers begin leaving, saying they need somewhere more family-oriented. They grumble about foul-mouthed bottom feeders. The customer meter runs down with sirens wailing and red lights flashing. Mr. Krabs is in the bathroom and hears the sirens. He looks through a periscope and sees the empty restaurant. He runs to the dining room with toilet paper stuck to his leg, yelling that all hands are on deck and asking where all his beautiful paying customers went. The 13 bad words. Squidward explains that the two barnacle-mouth brothers just learned a new word, and SpongeBob said it over the intercom. Mr. Krabs asks what word it was. Squidward whispers. Mr. Krabs can't hear, and Squidward whispers again. Mr. Krabs gasps and calls SpongeBob and Patrick to front and center. He says he should make them paint the Krusty Krab for using such language. SpongeBob protests they were only using sentence enhancers. Patrick adds it's fancy talk. Mr. Krabs insists there's nothing fancy about that word. SpongeBob says the censored word again, and Mr. Krabs confirms that's the one, telling them to quit saying it because it's a bad word. SpongeBob and Patrick gasp and regretfully wipe their tongues while moaning. Mr. Krabs confirms it's bad word number 11. In fact, there are 13 bad words they should never use. Squidward asks if he means there are only 7. Mr. Krabs says, not if you're a sailor, and laughs. SpongeBob is amazed there are 13. Patrick says that's a lot of censored bad words. Mr. Krabs makes them promise never to use that word again. Both promise. Eels and escalators. Later, at SpongeBob's house, SpongeBob and Patrick play eels and escalators. SpongeBob says he's glad Mr. Krabs told them it was a bad word. Patrick agrees because classy sophisticates like them shouldn't stain their lips with cursing. SpongeBob says, yay, verily, and suggests they play a wholesome game. Patrick flops his arms excitedly. SpongeBob rolls the dice, saying Gary needs new shoes. Patrick announces eels, meaning SpongeBob has to ride the eel. SpongeBob moves his piece. Patrick rolls escalators and moves up excitedly. SpongeBob keeps getting eels while Patrick keeps getting escalators. On SpongeBob's final roll, the dice lands on escalators initially, but then flips to eels. SpongeBob loses and says the censored word, immediately covering his mouth. Patrick gasps and says SpongeBob said number 11. SpongeBob babbles, trying to explain it was an accident and things just slip out. Patrick says he understands, pauses, then yells for Mr. Krabs and runs out the door. SpongeBob chases after him, begging him not to tell. Patrick says SpongeBob said the word, then accidentally says it himself and covers his mouth. SpongeBob announces he's telling on Patrick now. Patrick says not if he tells first. The race to tattle. SpongeBob says he can run faster than Patrick. Patrick jumps on an ice cream truck, saying he'll see SpongeBob at the Krusty Krab, but the truck turns away from the restaurant. SpongeBob laughs and barges into the Krusty Krab, calling for Mr. Krabs. He tries explaining that he and Patrick were playing eels and escalators, and Patrick said things. Mr. Krabs asks, what kind of things? SpongeBob explains Patrick said a certain word that Mr. Krabs said he shouldn't say, specifically number 11 on the list of 13 words. Mr. Krabs asks him to repeat what happened. Patrick walks in eating ice cream and throws away the cone. Both SpongeBob and Patrick tell Mr. Krabs that the other said the word they shouldn't. They babble over each other until Mr. Krabs grabs their lips to quiet them. Mr. Krabs says when he lets go, he wants them to calmly tell him what happened. He releases their lips, and they both immediately point at each other and say the other said the censored word. Mr. Krabs shrieks, asking if his ears deceive him. They should be ashamed. It's time to take out the trash. He picks them up by their pants and carries them outside. He says they need to be taught a lesson. He'll be back. Mr. Krabs' hypocrisy. SpongeBob and Patrick shake anxiously. Patrick asks what will happen to them. SpongeBob says they'll probably get 40 lashes. Patrick fearfully imagines himself with 40 thick eyelashes. SpongeBob apologizes and says Mr. Krabs is right about not using such words. Patrick apologizes too. SpongeBob suggests they make a vow that no foul word shall ever pass their lips again. They'll be good citizens like Mr. Krabs. Patrick shakes hands and agrees. Mr. Krabs returns with a ladder and paint cans. He says, as punishment for fouling the air with foul words, they're going to paint the Krusty Krab from top to bottom. He jams his foot on a rock and begins hopping on one leg. Then he unleashes a massive string of profanity, all censored by dolphin chirps, boat horns, seal barks, seagull squawks, ship bells, and various nautical sounds. SpongeBob and Patrick count each bad word. Mr. Krabs continues swearing extensively, using all sorts of censored phrases. When he finishes, SpongeBob has 13 fingers raised and announces that's all 13. He gasps and says they're telling Mr. Krabs' mom. Mr. Krabs begs them not to tell his mommy. SpongeBob and Patrick laugh as they run to Mama Krabs' house with Mr. Krabs chasing after them, pleading that his mother's little old heart can't take it. Mama Krabs. They arrive at Mama Krabs' house, which is shaped like a giant pink anchor. SpongeBob and Patrick bang on the door calling for Mama Krabs. Betsy Krabs answers cheerfully. All three begin explaining the situation at once while using censored words repeatedly. SpongeBob points at Patrick and Mr. Krabs while explaining who said what. Patrick keeps saying it was terrible. Mr. Krabs angrily calls them liars using censored language. Mama Krabs gasps and says her poor old heart, then faints. Mr. Krabs gasps and asks what these foul-mouthed heathens have done to his dear mother. He takes a coin from her pocket and tells SpongeBob and Patrick they should be ashamed for making an old lady faint with their sailor talk. Mama Krabs recovers and says they should all be ashamed. If they're going to talk like sailors, they're going to work like sailors. The scene transitions to SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs painting her house while Patrick paints the sand. Mama Krabs says they've earned lemonade and laughs. She stubs her foot on a rock and appears to say a bad word. but the sound is actually the horn from Old Man Jenkins's car as he drives by saying hello. Everyone laughs together as the episode ends. Why this episode works. Sailor Mouth succeeds because it addresses profanity in a way that's funny for children without actually using real curse words. The dolphin chirps and nautical sounds become their own joke. Kids find it hilarious without knowing what the actual words are, while adults recognize the structure and timing of real swearing. The sentence enhancer's concept is brilliantly simple. Patrick's explanation that you sprinkle them over anything to make spicy sentence sandwiches captures how children might misunderstand inappropriate language. The idea that SpongeBob and Patrick think they're being fancy rather than offensive is perfectly in character. The episode satirizes how people learn and spread bad language. SpongeBob finds it written on a dumpster and immediately starts using it without understanding what it means. The cycle of tattling and accidentally saying the word themselves while trying to report each other is classic comedy escalation. Mr. Krabs' hypocrisy provides the perfect ending. After lecturing SpongeBob and Patrick about the 13 bad words and making them promise never to use them, he immediately uses all 13 when he stubs his foot. This teaches the real lesson. Even authority figures who know better sometimes use bad language when upset. But that doesn't make it right. The counting of Mr. Krabs' bad words as he says them adds another layer of humor. SpongeBob holding up 13 fingers at the end is a great visual gag. The threat to tell his mother and his panicked response shows even Mr. Krabs answers to someone. Sailor Mouth demonstrates why early SpongeBob succeeded at multiple levels. It entertains children with silly sounds and slapstick, while giving adults satirical humor about language and hypocrisy. The episode teaches about inappropriate language without being preachy. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most discussed and referenced episodes in the series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Ripped Pants when a joke goes too far. Ripped Pants when a joke goes too far. Ripped Pants is one of the earliest and most memorable episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 1 episode originally aired on the 17th of July, 1999, making it the second half of the second episode ever produced. It drew 2.51 million viewers and introduced audiences to Goo Lagoon, one of the show's most iconic locations. The episode delivers an important message about authenticity and knowing when to stop a joke, wrapped in classic SpongeBob humor. A Day at Goo Lagoon. The episode begins with the French narrator describing Goo Lagoon as a stinky mud puddle to surface dwellers, but a wonderful stinky mud puddle to Bikini Bottom residents. SpongeBob and Sandy sit enjoying the beach. SpongeBob comments on what a great day it is and runs off to show Sandy something. He covers himself in sand and announces he's Sandy, making her laugh. He forms sand around his head to look like Squidward and imitates his voice, pretending to call SpongeBob on a sand phone and asking him to keep it down because he's trying to be boring. Sandy continues laughing. SpongeBob then appears carrying sand pizza boxes and wearing a Krusty Krab employee hat made of sand. He asks in his normal voice if anyone ordered 20 pepperoni and sand pizzas. He and Sandy laugh together. Larry the Lobster walks up and greets them both. He asks if they want to lift weights. Sandy agrees and calls for SpongeBob to come along. SpongeBob's sand creations fall flat as he walks dejectedly, saying he's coming. The weightlifting competition. The scene cuts to a group of weightlifters grunting as they work out. Larry tells Sandy to give it a try. Sandy stands in front of a weight and picks it up with effort. The crowd cheers as she throws it down. SpongeBob congratulates her and suggests that's enough for today, trying to leave. Larry asks about more weight and picks up something heavier. His eyes bulge and veins stick out from his neck as he lifts it. The crowd cheers and Larry throws the weight down. SpongeBob tells everyone to stand back and picks up a single twig from the ground. The crowd stays silent. He sinks into the sand from the weight. Sandy walks to another weight and tells everyone to watch. She picks up an anchor weight and the crowd cheers, but they stop when they realize Larry has lifted the entire spectator stands with everyone on them. Sandy congratulates Larry. SpongeBob burrows underground and tunnels over to someone picnicking next to marshmallows. He asks to borrow a couple. The person, with his mouth full of marshmallows, agrees. SpongeBob takes 2 marshmallows and places them on the twig. He announces the addition of 2 marshmallows and prepares for his lift. He inhales deeply, takes hold of the twig, and can't lift it. The crowd isn't impressed. He tries again multiple times. After a huge effort, SpongeBob hears a rip, and the crowd gasps. He looks down and sees he's ripped his pants. The crowd laughs. The birth of a running gag. SpongeBob scuttles off embarrassed. Scooter walks over laughing and tells SpongeBob that was too funny and he's hilarious. Sandy says he's the funniest little sponge ever. SpongeBob grins widely, getting an idea. The scene cuts to Larry with a volleyball asking if anyone wants to play. The ball volleys back and forth until Larry spikes it and the crowd cheers. SpongeBob looks at him with contempt. When someone serves and Larry prepares to hit it, SpongeBob interferes, saying he's got it. The ball falls and SpongeBob tries to serve, but misses. The crowd boos. He bends to pick up the ball and rips his pants again, announcing he did it. The crowd laughs. Scooter walks up, saying SpongeBob has split his sides again. The scene cuts to Frisbee. SpongeBob asks Sandy to throw it to him. She does, and SpongeBob stands still, letting it hit his head and knock him over. He asks for a hand and laughs. Sandy helps him up, asking if he's okay. SpongeBob does a handstand and announces he ripped his pants. The crowd laughs and Scooter tells him he's still got it, wearing out the joke. SpongeBob and Sandy walk to an ice cream vendor. SpongeBob orders a banana split. The vendor says they don't have that. SpongeBob says it's okay because he already split his pants. Sandy giggles. The annoyed vendor asks if there's anything else. SpongeBob asks about Ripple and rips his pants again, saying he already has one. The vendor is unamused. SpongeBob runs to a snack bar and knocks over someone's drink, asking if he's eating a burger. The person confirms he is. SpongeBob whispers that ripped pants would go good with that and shows his ripped pants. He runs around the snack bar laughing, appearing between 2 annoyed customers, announcing ripped pants a la mode. He goes to the kitchen next to the fry cook, claiming he has a delivery of 20 cases of ripped pants, shoving his behind through a box. The fry cook groans in disgust. A sports announcer describes the surfing at Goo Lagoon. Larry does his trademark layback. Sandy does a handstand on her board. Then SpongeBob rips his pants again. The announcer sounds annoyed. A wave knocks SpongeBob off his board and washes him to the beach. The drowning prank. Someone sees what looks like a cardboard box washed up on the beach. Looking closer through his telescope, he realizes it's a person. He sprints over and flips SpongeBob, repeatedly asking why. A crowd gathers, including Sandy. SpongeBob tells the lifeguard to come closer. A divine light shines on him. He says he needs something. The lifeguard asks what, with tears in his eyes. SpongeBob pats his shoulder and says he needs a tailor because he ripped his pants. The light turns off and SpongeBob laughs. The lifeguard makes an annoyed expression, drops SpongeBob, and walks off. The crowd disperses, looking annoyed. Sandy walks up looking angry and tells SpongeBob that wasn't funny and he had her worried sick. She walks off. Scooter walks over, shakes his head sadly at SpongeBob, and leaves. Alone and forgotten. Inside a dressing tent, SpongeBob thinks about losing the crowd and needing to come up with new material. He checks off his list. Lifting weights got big laughs. Frisbee and Face killed. Surfing knocked them dead. He gets to pretending to drown and writes "no" with a circle around it. He runs out announcing not ripped pants, but pants ripped off completely. He tears off his pants. The wind howls as SpongeBob stands alone. A tumbleweed rolls by. He hears party music and sees Larry and Sandy playing volleyball together. SpongeBob realizes everyone's gone, even Sandy, who would rather hang out with Larry. He lies on the beach saying they blew it and throws his pants aside. The pants ask what he means by "we" and walk away, leaving SpongeBob completely alone. He realizes he didn't have to be a fool to get Sandy's attention and asks if he's the biggest loser on the beach. The other losers. A sunburned fish walks up saying no, he's the biggest loser because he forgot sunscreen. He places a fin on himself and it leaves a mark. Another person says he's the biggest loser because he got sand in his buns, showing sandy hamburger buns. A whale pops his head from the sand saying he's the biggest loser because they buried him and forgot him. They all ask what happened to SpongeBob. He says he lost his best friend. The song and redemption. SpongeBob grabs a sand guitar and begins singing in front of the sand castle he built earlier. He sings about thinking he had everybody on his side but blowing it sky high, and now Sandy won't even spare him a passing glance, all because he ripped his pants. A curtain comes down with a spotlight on him. The other three losers assemble on a sand stage with sand instruments and join in singing. The song continues with SpongeBob singing about not wanting to mope around or curse, but the pain feeling so much worse, because winding up with no one is less fun than a sunburn or sand in your buns. He sings about learning a lesson he won't forget. Be true to yourself and don't miss your chance, or you'll end up like the fool who ripped his pants. The whole group rips their pants together in sync with the music. A huge crowd has gathered and cheers. A blimp flies by with SpongeBob's name on it, revealing this has become a full concert. Sandy calls for SpongeBob and gets on stage to hug him. She tells him his song is true, and if he wants to be her friend, he should just be himself. Larry walks up impressed and asks SpongeBob to sign his pants. SpongeBob bends down to sign them and his underwear rips off completely, leaving him naked. He covers himself and blushes sheepishly as the episode ends. The episode's lasting impact. Ripped Pants succeeds because it addresses a real social problem through comedy. SpongeBob discovers that making people laugh feels good and keeps doing the same joke over and over. But he takes it too far, especially with the drowning prank that genuinely scares people. The episode shows how someone can become so focused on getting attention that they lose sight of why they wanted it in the first place. The song became iconic and is still remembered by fans decades later. The message about being true to yourself and not trying too hard to impress people resonates with viewers of all ages. The other losers on the beach provide perspective that everyone has embarrassing moments and failures, making SpongeBob's situation relatable. Ripped Pants also introduced Goo Lagoon, which became a recurring location throughout the series. Larry the Lobster made his debut here and became a regular character. The episode established SpongeBob's relationship with Sandy as genuine friendship, rather than him constantly trying to impress her. The humor works on multiple levels. Children find the pants ripping funny, while adults recognize the social commentary about attention-seeking behavior. The escalation from accidental humor to forced repetition to dangerous pranks mirrors real-life situations where jokes go from funny to annoying to harmful. Ripped Pants demonstrates why early SpongeBob connected with audiences. It combines slapstick comedy with genuine heart and an important message. The episode never feels preachy because the lesson emerges naturally from the story. Over 25 years later, it remains one of the most beloved and quoted episodes in the entire series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Idiot Box, Imagination versus Television. Idiot Box is one of the most creative and philosophical episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 3 episode originally aired on the 1st of March 2002 and drew 3.91 million viewers. The episode explores the power of imagination versus passive entertainment through the simple premise of SpongeBob and Patrick playing in a cardboard box. It became famous for the imagination meme showing SpongeBob making a rainbow with his hands. The package. arrives. The episode begins with Patrick wearing 2 glasses of water on his eyes, like binoculars, his eyes appearing as live-action human eyes. He announces the mail truck is coming. SpongeBob and Patrick dance and hop excitedly. Squidward comments that he didn't realize it was Happy Hopping Moron Day. The mail carrier asks for SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob confirms that's him and receives a big box. Squidward notes it's a big box. SpongeBob thanks him while still dancing and hopping. Patrick asks when they stop hopping. SpongeBob says 30 more seconds. Squidward assumes they probably ordered a lifetime supply of bubble soap and laughs. SpongeBob and Patrick lift a big screen television from the box and throw it onto a trash can. They jump into the empty box and close the flaps, cheering. Squidward approaches the box, asking them to confirm what he's seeing. They ordered a giant screen television just to play in the box. SpongeBob emerges, saying it was pretty smart. Patrick emerges, saying he thought it wouldn't work. Squidward yells in their faces, asking if they have any brains. The power of imagination. SpongeBob explains they don't need television as long as they have their imagination, making a rainbow over his head with his hands. Squidward sarcastically says he never thought of it that way and asks if he can have their TV. SpongeBob says with imagination, he can be anything he wants. He demonstrates being a pirate by curling his finger like a hook and saying, "R." He becomes a football player by getting into a stance. Patrick says a starfish. Squidward points out Patrick is already a starfish. Patrick says it works and tells Squidward to try. Squidward says he's imagining himself watching TV and there it is, pointing to the television on the trash can. He asks if he can have it. SpongeBob agrees. Squidward excitedly runs to the TV and pushes it toward his house. SpongeBob tells him if he changes his mind, they'll be in the box. Patrick suggests playing mountain climbing adventure. Mountain climbing in a box. SpongeBob and Patrick close the box flaps. They check off their equipment, gloves, hats, and underwear. SpongeBob tells Patrick to climb up and secure the rope. Climbing noises come from the box. SpongeBob warns Patrick he's going too high. Squidward hopes they put air holes in that box and goes inside his house. SpongeBob tells Patrick to take it easy and acclimate. Patrick says he'll take it easy when he's dead and he's shaking hands with Neptune. Squidward comes back looking for his remote, which is next to the box. He picks it up and stands, listening. Patrick declares he's the Lizard King. SpongeBob thinks they should keep their voices down to avoid an avalanche. Patrick asks what. SpongeBob repeats louder that they should keep voices down in case of avalanches. Patrick asks what they should keep down. Squidward calls them morons. SpongeBob yells, "Our voices." Squidward tells them to shut up and kicks the box, causing avalanche sounds. SpongeBob and Patrick scream and fall, then cry. Squidward looks shocked and softly touches the box, causing another avalanche sound. Patrick asks SpongeBob to hold him. SpongeBob says the chopper is on the way. Patrick says his legs are frozen solid and SpongeBob will have to cut them off with a saw. Squidward begins sweating. SpongeBob says he can't do that because he already cut off his own arms. Patrick screams no. Squidward's investigation. Squidward quickly opens the box and looks inside. SpongeBob and Patrick sit calmly. Squidward asks how they're making those noises. SpongeBob asks what noise. Patrick says he could only hear their laughter. Squidward mentions the avalanche sounds. Patrick reminds him not to forget the second avalanche. Squidward closes the box, saying he should be watching his new television. Helicopter sounds come from the box. A pilot's voice announces the saws are on the way. SpongeBob and Patrick cheer. Squidward opens the box again and sees them sitting inside. He asks how they're doing that. SpongeBob starts explaining about establishing base camp. Squidward interrupts, asking about the noises. Patrick says all you need is a box. SpongeBob makes a rainbow with his hands and says imagination. Squidward asks if they're saying he has no imagination, insisting he has more imagination in one tentacle than they have in their whole bodies. He tries making a rainbow with his hands but fails. Patrick says that's good and now he just needs a box. Squidward returns to his house, determined to show them. He looks in his closet for a box and finds a small, round, green hat box. He pulls out a Mexican sombrero, wondering why he hasn't worn it yet. He gets in the box, but he's too big for it. He just sits there, checks his watch, and kicks the box angrily. Police sirens are heard from SpongeBob and Patrick's box. A voice announces they have him surrounded. Squidward worries about violating some box-kicking law. A criminal voice says they'll never take him alive. Another voice pleads with Johnny not to do it. Patrick opens the box. The sirens stop, and he takes Squidward's hat box, saying, "Whoopee, another box." He closes the main box and sirens start again. Squidward decides to relax with TV. Every channel shows something about boxes: a factory assembly line, a professor's equation, people exchanging box gifts, and finally a boxing match. Squidward gives up. The space launch. Astronaut voices count down from the box and rocket sounds are heard. Squidward becomes fascinated, wondering how they're doing that. He imagines SpongeBob and Patrick using a tape recorder with sound effects. He opens the box, demanding to know where the tape recorder is. Patrick emerges from the small hat box. SpongeBob asks, "Where's what?" Squidward demands the tape recorder. SpongeBob insists they don't have one. Patrick holds up a small white box, saying they have a tape recorder box. Squidward throws it away and climbs into the main box. SpongeBob welcomes him aboard the S. Imagination, making a rainbow with his hands. He asks where Squidward wants to go first. Squidward says he's just there to observe. SpongeBob explains the box isn't about waiting and watching, it's about imagination. Squidward tells them to take him to Robot Pirate Island, where he wants to arm wrestle cowboys on the moon. SpongeBob agrees. He and Patrick close their eyes, making pirate and robot sounds, while Squidward sits there confused. Squidward gets angry, asking why it won't turn on, and slams the box bottom. He exits, saying he has better things to do than wonder how they work the thing. The nighttime discovery. Squidward paces in his house, asking how those two work that thing. There must be a secret button or switch. He hears realistic robot and pirate battle sounds. He decides to wait until they go to bed and sneak in to find the button. Fireworks and cheering sounds come from the box as night falls. SpongeBob and Patrick emerge. Patrick says he needs sleep to refuel his imagination tanks. SpongeBob mentions he can't believe the pirates beat all the robots. They say goodnight and go to their houses. Squidward sneaks to the box and gets inside. He finds a plaque commemorating brave pirates who gave their lives to keep the box safe from the robot menace. He tears it up angrily and searches for the button. He sees nothing but an empty box. He wonders if it really was their imagination, but tells himself to get it together. He pretends to drive a race car and hears engine sounds. He pushes a gear shift. It works. He's thrilled, saying this beats TV by a long shot and is the most fun he's ever had. The sounds actually come from a garbage truck that lifts the box with the trash. SpongeBob lies in bed reading and tells Gary that Squidward finally made the box work after all. The garbage truck drives away with Squidward still inside, pretending to race. The truck dumps the trash and the box slides down a pile. Squidward thinks he's winning the race. The box opens and he tumbles down, landing face first in a cherry pie. The box falls on him. The next morning, SpongeBob and Patrick notice their box is gone. Patrick says, "Oh well." SpongeBob suggests visiting Squidward. Patrick hopes he's not too down in the dumps today. They walk to Squidward's house as the episode ends. The episode's deeper meaning. Idiot Box works as both entertainment and social commentary. The episode contrasts active imagination with passive consumption. SpongeBob and Patrick create their own adventures using nothing but a box and their minds. Squidward, despite getting a big screen TV, becomes obsessed with how the box works because he can't accept that imagination alone creates the experience. The irony is that Squidward spends the entire episode trying to understand imagination through logical means. He searches for buttons, switches, and tape recorders. He can't comprehend that SpongeBob and Patrick simply close their eyes and imagine adventures. When he finally tries it himself, he experiences genuine joy, but only because a garbage truck provides real sounds and movement. The famous imagination rainbow gesture became one of the most recognizable SpongeBob memes. It perfectly captures the episode's message. Imagination is a magical ability that anyone can access. The visual of SpongeBob making a rainbow over his head while saying the word has been used countless times online to mock people who rely too heavily on imagination or to celebrate creative thinking. The episode also satirizes adults who have lost touch with childhood imagination. Squidward represents people who need technology and explanations for everything. He can't just play pretend anymore. Even when he tries, he needs external validation through real sounds. The ending where he gets dumped in trash suggests that trying to force or fake imagination leads to disappointment. Idiot Box demonstrates why early SpongeBob succeeded at multiple levels. Children enjoy the silly premise of playing in a box. Adults recognize the commentary about imagination, technology, and the difficulty of recapturing childhood wonder. The episode never becomes preachy because the humor stays at the forefront. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most beloved and memed episodes in the entire series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Plankton, the debut of SpongeBob's smallest enemy. Plankton, the debut of SpongeBob's smallest enemy. Plankton is a historically important episode in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This season 1 episode originally aired on the 31st of July, 1999, making it only the 3rd episode ever produced. It drew 2.89 million viewers and introduced Sheldon J. Plankton, who would become one of the series' most important recurring characters. The episode establishes the core conflict between Mr. Krabs and Plankton over the Krabby Patty secret formula that would drive countless future episodes. A Day at the Krusty Krab. The episode opens with an aerial view of the Krusty Krab. Inside, Squidward calls for 1 Krabby Patty for table 2, impatiently telling SpongeBob he doesn't have all day. SpongeBob speaks in a French accent, saying, "First comes the patty." He flips it in the air, and it falls into one of his holes. He holds up other ingredients. Squidward tells him to hurry. SpongeBob says next comes the ingredients and throws them in the air, catching them in his holes and pants. He squirts mustard, but it lands in his eye. Squidward demands to know where his Krabby Patty is. SpongeBob tells him to hold on, takes his head off, shakes it like a cocktail mixer, and puts it back on with his eyes rolling around. He announces voila and pulls a Krabby Patty from under Squidward's nose in his normal voice, saying it's under his nose. He laughs and puts it on a plate. Squidward pretends to laugh and says SpongeBob is killing him. SpongeBob looks at the patty admiringly, calling it Mr. Krabs' gift to all of Bikini Bottom. Squidward asks for it, but the Krabby Patty suddenly flies off the plate and starts bouncing everywhere. Squidward tells SpongeBob to stop it. SpongeBob swears he's not doing anything and yells that the patty is haunted. The patty slithers toward the exit. Mr. Krabs spears it with his leg. A tiny creature comes out and Mr. Krabs inspects it with a magnifying glass. Plankton's introduction. Mr. Krabs identifies the intruder as Plankton, stealing his booty. Through the magnifying glass, Plankton declares that when he discovers the formula for Krabby Patties, he'll run Mr. Krabs out of business. He went to college. Mr. Krabs picks him up. Plankton demands to be let go. Mr. Krabs says he'll let him go on a flying saucer. He puts Plankton on a plate and opens the Krusty Krab doors. He tells Plankton to go back to the chum bucket and spins him across the street. Plankton yells that Mr. Krabs will pay for this and slams through the chum bucket doors. SpongeBob asks about Plankton. Mr. Krabs explains that Plankton has been trying to steal the secret formula for years but hasn't gotten it yet. He laughs and SpongeBob joins in, braying loudly. Mr. Krabs stops, but SpongeBob keeps going. Mr. Krabs tells him it wasn't that funny and angrily orders him back to work. The golden spatula trick. The scene transitions to nighttime at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob says goodnight to Mr. Krabs and walks out past the chum bucket. An unseen voice calls to him. SpongeBob looks around confused. The voice tells him to come closer. SpongeBob walks forward. The voice says, "Not that close," and a crunching sound is heard. SpongeBob lifts his shoe, revealing a squished Plankton. Plankton calls him a blasted barnacle head, then says, "Hi." SpongeBob peels Plankton off his shoe onto his hand. Plankton says, "Ouch." SpongeBob asks what he wants. Plankton says he just wants to talk and they could be friends. SpongeBob says no. Plankton asks about acquaintances. SpongeBob says no again. Plankton points out they're both invertebrates. SpongeBob admits that's true. Plankton says everything works out and he has something from his secret compartment. He pulls out a golden spatula that sparkles. SpongeBob marvels at the golden spatula with his name on it. Plankton calls it a gift from a friend. He hugs SpongeBob's thumb and says friends give each other gifts, and tomorrow is his birthday. He puts birthday hats on his head and SpongeBob's thumb blows a noisemaker and takes out a cake. He asks what SpongeBob thinks he'd like more than anything in the world. SpongeBob guesses a booster seat. Plankton takes off the hat and throws out the cake. Plankton excitedly says booster seat, then catches himself and says no. What he really wants for his birthday is one of those tender, delicious Krabby Patties. He starts drooling. SpongeBob drops Plankton and gasps. He accuses Plankton of only wanting friendship to get a Krabby Patty, and bets it's not even his birthday tomorrow. Plankton sarcastically says he thought SpongeBob was stupid. SpongeBob declares Plankton will never get a Krabby Patty from him, even if they are friends. He runs off, repeating never, the mind control plan. Plankton says he'll get a Krabby Patty, and SpongeBob will hand-deliver it personally. He calls SpongeBob a weak-minded fool and pulls out a gramophone playing evil music while laughing. The scene cuts to SpongeBob's bedroom where he says goodnight to Gary and goes to sleep. One of the flowers on his bedsheets pops up, revealing Plankton in disguise wearing a backpack with an antenna-like machine. Plankton chuckles evilly and says SpongeBob will be his. He pulls out the gramophone, but it plays a children's alphabet song instead of evil music. He quickly flips the record to the right side and it plays evil music. He walks through one of SpongeBob's holes and begins his journey. Plankton reads a map showing a giant brain. He wonders where it is, then realizes he's standing on the brain. Outside, SpongeBob rolls in his sleep, causing the brain to fall and Plankton to tumble off. He chases the brain, calling it a swine. SpongeBob rolls the other way, and the brain squishes Plankton. SpongeBob sleeps on his back, and the brain stops rolling. Plankton holds up duct tape and declares the brain is going down. He tapes it in place and takes out blueprints showing the control device and brain. He jams the control into the brain and presses the total control button. SpongeBob wakes up, saying it's morning already, under Plankton's control. Plankton jams the controls, and SpongeBob's legs shoot out to his sides. He rumbles and falls down. SpongeBob says he feels a little funny today. Plankton makes him walk and laughs evilly. SpongeBob walks toward the kitchen, saying it's time for a well-balanced breakfast. He rams through the wall and through his refrigerator, emerging with bread, milk, and an egg carton on his head. He says this isn't what he had in mind. He walks toward his pants, but they spring him away. He eventually breaks free and keeps walking, saying he guesses he's not wearing pants today. He crashes through the wall and says he guesses he's not using the door either. He tells Gary goodbye, and Gary meows. SpongeBob agrees with Gary that something is wrong with him. He crashes through Squidward's bedroom wall, yelling for help. Squidward asks what SpongeBob is doing and if he's mad. SpongeBob turns his head to Squidward. Plankton speaks through SpongeBob, telling him to shut his mouth and calling him a mediocre clarinet player. Squidward repeats mediocre. Plankton calls him a pretentious, insignificant artist whose creations are worth less than a protozoan's waste. The battle for control. SpongeBob snaps out of confusion and says something must be wrong with his brain. His eyes roll into the back of his head and he sees Plankton. He gasps and asks what kind of friend Plankton is. Plankton says SpongeBob never liked him anyway and wouldn't even come to his birthday party. From outside, SpongeBob yells for Plankton to get out of his head and leave his brain alone. Plankton refuses and laughs evilly. Squidward turns pale and faints. SpongeBob crashes through Patrick's rock and emerges with Patrick sleeping on his head. He throws Patrick off and walks toward the Krusty Krab. Plankton says, "How about a little takeout?" SpongeBob refuses. He crashes through the Krusty Krab and emerges with a Krabby Patty. Plankton laughs evilly. SpongeBob says Plankton can't fool him because he wants the formula. They walk into the chum bucket. Plankton says SpongeBob is going to hand-deliver it personally. They walk through a door, and SpongeBob notes there's no one there. Plankton says not to remind him and shows SpongeBob his lab, which displays a live-action Labrador Retriever that barks. They walk into the next room, a real laboratory. Plankton shows SpongeBob his record player, and it plays dramatic music while he laughs evilly. The analyzer. SpongeBob says he must fight and bites against the door while his body tries to walk. Plankton pushes the levers forward and SpongeBob slams against the wall and wobbles over to a giant funnel. Plankton explains this is his analyzer that tells the ingredients of whatever he puts in it. A robot arm drops seaweed into the funnel. The computer screen displays the analysis. Karen Plankton's voice reads that seaweed is 50% sea and 50% weed. A picture of seaweed appears. Plankton asks if SpongeBob is impressed and says they'll now reveal the secret formula. He laughs evilly and pulls the lever, making 2 of SpongeBob's fingers lose grip on the patty. 2 more fingers lose grip. Plankton asks for any last words. SpongeBob tries to resist but stops. He says he's sorry he let Mr. Krabs down and all of Bikini Bottom down. But worst of all, he let down the delicate little Krabby Patty. One of his teary eyes twinkles. He starts tearing up, describing the patty's tasty, juicy, scrumptious, warm, steamy goodness. Inside, Plankton starts getting hungry. A live-action patty gets assembled on screen as SpongeBob describes it, Plankton's downfall. SpongeBob describes the 100% all-secret patty secretly assembled with undersea cheese, pickles, lettuce, tomato, and onion, all secretly steaming between 2 fluffy seaweed sea buns. Plankton starts drooling excessively and says yes, repeatedly. He jumps out of SpongeBob's hole toward the patty, saying to come to Papa. He bounces off the patty and accidentally lands in the analyzer. The computer analyzes Plankton and Karen's voice reads that Plankton is 1% evil and 99% hot gas. Plankton appears on the screen saying, "This stinks." SpongeBob says he guesses they can go home now and walks out. Plankton yells that it's his Krabby Patty. SpongeBob walks out the swivel doors as they go back and forth. Plankton calls him a porous freak and commands him to give it back. The doors close. Plankton screams no, then says in a normal voice he'll settle for some fries. The episode ends. The episode's legacy. Plankton succeeds as an origin story for one of the series' most important characters. The episode establishes Plankton as a villain, but makes him sympathetic through his size and constant failures. His college education and elaborate plans contrast with his inability to achieve his goals. The dynamic between Mr. Krabs and Plankton over the secret formula would fuel hundreds of future episodes. The mind control plot showcases creative visual comedy. Seeing Plankton inside SpongeBob's brain with a control panel turns an abstract concept into concrete cartoon logic. SpongeBob's loss of control as he crashes through walls and can't perform basic tasks is both funny and slightly disturbing. The episode balances humor with genuine stakes. Karen Plankton's debut as a computer wife adds another layer to Plankton's character. Her dry, analytical responses contrast with his emotional outbursts. The analyzer revealing Plankton as 99% hot gas rather than evil provides the perfect punchline. It suggests Plankton is more bluster than genuine threat, explaining why he keeps failing. SpongeBob's emotional description of the Krabby Patty demonstrates his genuine love for his work. His tears and detailed description make Plankton so hungry he loses control, showing how SpongeBob's sincerity can be weaponized. This moment establishes that SpongeBob's enthusiasm and innocence often defeat more calculating opponents. The episode introduces key elements that would define the series, the secret formula as the central MacGuffin, Plankton's elaborate schemes, Mr. Krabs' paranoia about protecting his recipe, and SpongeBob's unwavering loyalty to the Krusty Krab. These elements would be revisited and expanded throughout the show's run. Plankton demonstrates why early SpongeBob succeeded at establishing a world and characters. The episode introduces a new antagonist, explains his motivation, shows his methods, and defeats him in a satisfying way. It sets up future conflicts while working as a standalone story. Over 25 years later, Plankton remains one of the most beloved characters in the series, proof that this debut episode succeeded in making audiences care about SpongeBob's smallest enemy. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to F.U.N, SpongeBob and Plankton's brief friendship, is one of the most emotionally complex episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 1 episode originally aired on the 18th of September 1999 and drew 2.41 million viewers. The episode explores themes of friendship, betrayal, and manipulation through the relationship between SpongeBob and Plankton. It features one of the most iconic songs in the entire series and delivers a surprisingly mature message about trust and deception, the Krabby Patty chase. The episode begins at lunchtime at the Krusty Krab with everyone enjoying their food. Suddenly the lights go off, sirens blare, and red lights flash. Everyone screams and runs for cover as the doors and windows become metal barriers. Mr. Krabs asks Squidward if he can spot the intruder. Squidward points from a crow's nest with a telescope, identifying a Krabby Patty bouncing toward the door. The narrator gasps and announces a Krabby Patty napping is in progress. The patty shoots a laser hole through the door. The narrator declares there can only be one culprit, Plankton. Plankton celebrates that victory is finally his. Inside the Krusty Krab, Squidward reports that Plankton got away. Mr. Krabs is devastated that his secret recipe has been stolen. The narrator suggests perhaps not, because SpongeBob SquarePants is on the case. SpongeBob tears himself into another copy and flies off. SpongeBob peeks out from the sewer with binoculars and spots the patty jumping through the crowd. He chases it behind buildings. Plankton flies up with a propeller, and SpongeBob follows using a twirling club as his own propeller. They reach the top of a building, and the patty jumps off. SpongeBob blows his Krusty Krab hat into a balloon and jumps, bouncing after the patty. The patty slides into a magic shop and comes back out wearing Groucho glasses. SpongeBob asks if the person has seen a Krabby Patty, then notices the magic shop sign. He gets excited and starts rambling about a magician who told him that if you believe in yourself with a tiny pinch of magic, all your dreams can come true. The disguise unveils to reveal Plankton. Plankton's breakdown. Plankton declares he can't take it anymore. SpongeBob identifies him. Plankton says after all these years he thought he was the master of torture, but that wasn't fair. He hands over the patty, saying he doesn't want the secret recipe anyway. He guesses his restaurant will never be as good as the Krusty Krab. He tells SpongeBob he doesn't know what it's like to be a loser and cries. SpongeBob tries to cheer him up, saying he thinks Plankton is a winner. Plankton stops crying and asks what SpongeBob said. SpongeBob starts to repeat himself, but a group of people run up and point at Plankton, calling him a loser. Plankton jumps away and walks back to the chum bucket. Squidward asks how it feels to be the most hated thing in Bikini Bottom. Someone announces they're making SpongeBob the honorary town rookie of the day and puts a big donut ribbon around him. Everyone sings about SpongeBob being a jolly good rookie and throws him in the air. SpongeBob thinks to himself that if Plankton had just one friend, he wouldn't be such a meanie. Everyone stops singing and walks away. At the chum bucket, Plankton hears a knock and thinks it's a customer. He opens the door and sees SpongeBob. Plankton asks if SpongeBob hasn't degraded him enough for one day. SpongeBob says he wants Plankton to come out and play with him. Plankton asks if SpongeBob knows how to induce thermonuclear fusion. SpongeBob says no, but he likes to go jellyfishing. Plankton closes the door and complains about the naive cube. Karen asks if he's letting SpongeBob leave and points out this is the perfect opportunity for revenge. She tells him to befriend SpongeBob, and when the timing is right, take the Krabby Patty. Plankton runs back to the door. Karen tells him not to let SpongeBob get away. The F.U.N. song. SpongeBob continues talking about jellyfishing when Plankton opens the door. Plankton agrees to play SpongeBob's little game. SpongeBob grabs him and runs off, saying the last one to Jellyfish Fields is a rotten clam. At the fields, SpongeBob gives Plankton a net bigger than him. Plankton asks what happens after they eat the jellyfish. SpongeBob explains you don't eat them, you catch and release them. He demonstrates and warns about the stingers. Plankton imagines ruling Bikini Bottom with a jellyfish only he controls. SpongeBob interrupts, saying it's not about winning, but about fun. Plankton asks what that is. SpongeBob struggles to define it and decides to spell it out. He sings that F is for friends who do stuff together, U is for you and me, N is for anywhere and anytime at all, down here in the deep blue sea. Plankton sings his own twisted version. F is for fire that burns down the whole town. U is for uranium bombs. N is for no survivors. SpongeBob protests that those things aren't what fun is about. Plankton calls it completely idiotic. SpongeBob grabs Plankton's hands and helps him dance through the song. Plankton performs a cartwheel for the end part. He says he feels all tingly inside and asks if they should stop. SpongeBob says that's how you're supposed to feel. Plankton says he likes it and wants to do it again. They sing together about frolicking through flowers, playing ukulele, nose-picking, sharing gum, and sand-licking. At the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs looks through a telescope at them and growls about mutiny. That night at the chum bucket, Plankton tells Karen about frolicking through flowers. Karen asks what happened with the Krabby Patty. Plankton doesn't understand at first. Karen reminds him about the mission and shows him wearing square pants like SpongeBob. Plankton realizes he's gone native. The betrayal revealed. At the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs says he hasn't seen Plankton in a while and he must be scheming. SpongeBob suggests maybe he's changed. Mr. Krabs shows photos of SpongeBob and Plankton with the F.U.N. letters. Plankton enters calling for his sponge buddy. SpongeBob runs over and they start to leave. Mr. Krabs asks to speak with SpongeBob privately and puts a plate with a Krabby Patty on the table near Plankton. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob that Plankton is a thief with lust in his eye. SpongeBob asks why Mr. Krabs can't accept their friendship. Mr. Krabs insists Plankton is after the recipe and will prove it. He tells Plankton he must be hungry, but Plankton says he's saving his appetite for popcorn at the movies. Mr. Krabs pushes the plate closer and uses a fan to blow the smell toward Plankton. SpongeBob turns off the fan and says they've had enough tests. They walk away together. Mr. Krabs wonders if maybe Plankton has gone straight. Then the plate falls, revealing it was cardboard. He jumps in his register boat and paddles to the movie theater. Inside, SpongeBob gives Plankton popcorn. Bubble Bass sits on Plankton, squishing him. SpongeBob asks him to move. Bubble Bass smiles meanly and gets comfortable. SpongeBob throws popcorn and Bubble Bass chases it. Plankton thanks SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs appears on the movie screen telling SpongeBob to reach into Plankton's pocket. Everyone steals from whoever is next to them. SpongeBob takes out a Krabby Patty and gasps. Plankton says it's not what SpongeBob thinks. SpongeBob asks what it is then and starts crying, asking how Plankton can't see it. Plankton admits it's a Krabby Patty and he couldn't help it. SpongeBob mentions they sang the F.U.N. song and feels sick. He grabs Plankton, asking how long he'd been planning this. Plankton puts his head down and sobs. SpongeBob's tears drip down his face. Plankton admits he tricked SpongeBob to get the patty, but then SpongeBob showed him friendship and now he realizes that's all he ever wanted. SpongeBob sniffs and starts to smile, asking if he means it. Plankton grabs the patty and jumps toward the screen saying no, being evil is too much fun. The concrete wall. Plankton rips through the movie screen running away. The lights turn on. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that Plankton is gone with the patty and won. Mr. Krabs reveals solid concrete behind the screen. The patty falls off, showing Plankton squished on the wall. Mr. Krabs takes the patty. SpongeBob apologizes for thinking Plankton had changed. Mr. Krabs says no friendship could withstand the allure of a Krabby Patty and suggests going back for a fresh one on him, then changes it to a discount. Mr. Krabs flicks Plankton onto Bubble Bass's jelly beans. Plankton gets chased around, being mistaken for a jelly bean as the episode ends. The episode's emotional impact, F.U.N, works because it treats the friendship between SpongeBob and Plankton seriously before revealing the betrayal. SpongeBob genuinely believes he can reform Plankton through kindness. The F.U.N song becomes a teaching moment where SpongeBob tries to show Plankton what friendship means. Plankton's twisted version reveals his worldview. Everything is about destruction and domination. The moment when Plankton starts feeling tingly inside and admits he likes the feeling suggests he's genuinely experiencing friendship for the first time. The fact that Karen has to remind him about his mission shows he was getting distracted by actually enjoying himself. This makes the betrayal more painful because there's a possibility Plankton could have changed. The confrontation at the theater delivers real emotion. SpongeBob crying and asking how long Plankton planned this betrayal hits hard. When Plankton starts sobbing and admits the truth about friendship being what he wanted, the audience believes him along with SpongeBob. The fake-out where Plankton grabs the patty and declares being evil is too much fun, stings because we wanted to believe in redemption. F.U.N demonstrates why early SpongeBob succeeded at emotional storytelling. The episode balances humor with genuine feelings. SpongeBob's optimism and belief in the good in others gets exploited, teaching a harsh lesson about manipulation. The episode suggests some people will take advantage of kindness, no matter how sincere you are. Over 2 decades later, it remains one of the most emotionally resonant episodes in the entire series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Wet Painters, Mr. Krabs' first dollar and permanent paint. Wet Painters is one of the most suspenseful and comedically tense episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This season 3 episode originally aired on the 10th of May, 2002, and became famous for its escalating anxiety and brilliant reveal ending. The episode takes a simple premise about painting a room and turns it into an extended exercise in comic paranoia that builds tension for nearly the entire runtime before delivering one of the most satisfying punchlines in the series: the ritual gone wrong. The episode begins with the French narrator describing a slow day at the Krusty Krab. Inside the restaurant, SpongeBob holds up 2 raw Krabby Patties in his hands and tells Squidward to check this out. He explains these are 2 ordinary Krabby Patties, but when expertly tossed with the skill of a champ, they become something special. He throws them on the floor and slides the patties across the room. Patrick suddenly jumps out of nowhere with his feet landing perfectly on the patties like skis. He declares this is a one-way ticket to pain before slamming directly into the wall with tremendous force. The impact is so powerful that it causes Mr. Krabs' office window to fall and shatter. Mr. Krabs reacts with surprise from inside his office. Outside, SpongeBob ends up inside Patrick's mouth holding a mop as Patrick continues sliding off screen. SpongeBob yells heave-ho before they crash again. The office door slams open and Mr. Krabs storms out, demanding to know what in the devilfish is going on. He declares that time is money, and if they're wasting time, they're wasting money, and that's just sick. SpongeBob explains earnestly that they were performing a ritual to attract customers. He adds that the only way the ritual can work is for them to get hurt real bad. Mr. Krabs asks what stupid barnacle told them that ridiculous information. The camera cuts to Squidward, standing at the register with a magazine in his hands and a suspicious grin on his face. Mr. Krabs tells them that instead of killing themselves, he has something really important for them to do. The super special secret assignment. The scene cuts to outside Mr. Krabs' house. Mr. Krabs stands with SpongeBob and Patrick, building up the announcement. He asks if they're ready for their super assignment. SpongeBob and Patrick's eyes get wide as they repeat the word super. Mr. Krabs adds special. Their eyes get even bigger and their lips tremble as they repeat special. Mr. Krabs whispers the word secret. SpongeBob and Patrick's faces become small as they whisper secret back. Mr. Krabs finishes with assignment. Their eyes get gear-like and they start sobbing while shouting incoherently, completely overwhelmed by the build-up. Mr. Krabs finally reveals that the two of them are to paint the inside of his house. He opens the front door, showing the interior. SpongeBob and Patrick jump into the air, celebrating and cheering. But Mr. Krabs immediately charges at them from the right in a stern tone, saying he needs to give them a warning. He holds up 2 buckets of paint and explains that this paint is absolutely permanent. He shoves the paint buckets into SpongeBob and Patrick's hands. He emphasizes angrily that it will never come off. Mr. Krabs continues his warning with increasing intensity. If he sees even one drop on anything but wall, he screams that he'll have their rear ends cut off and mounted over his fireplace. He holds up 2 empty plaques, each already labeled with their names, suggesting he's been planning this threat. SpongeBob and Patrick backstep behind the open door in terror. Mr. Krabs' tone suddenly becomes casual and friendly as he tells them to have fun with the job and slams the door, trapping them inside the house with the permanent paint, surveying the dangerous territory. Inside the house, SpongeBob and Patrick turn around and look at their surroundings. SpongeBob calls out to Patrick. Patrick responds, asking what SpongeBob wants. The camera cuts to a view of the room showing numerous expensive-looking objects cluttered everywhere. Mr. Krabs' house is filled with treasures, paintings, decorations, and various valuable items covering nearly every surface. SpongeBob observes nervously that Mr. Krabs sure has a lot of expensive treasures to drip paint on. He puts his paint bucket down and asks Patrick if they should take this stuff off the walls first. Patrick points at SpongeBob and says, "Absolutely not. They're not getting paid to move stuff." SpongeBob points out that they're not getting paid at all. Patrick insists that's what he said. They're not getting paid, and that's final. SpongeBob accepts this logic and says they'll just paint around all the stuff. Patrick agrees, telling SpongeBob not to pay him. SpongeBob says first they need to set out the tarp and pulls one out. Patrick grabs the other end, announcing "Tarp ahoy." They spread the tarp on the floor together. The camera zooms out, revealing that the tarp is absolutely tiny, covering only a small fraction of the floor space. SpongeBob realizes they're going to need more coverage. The scene cuts to show more tarp pieces covering more of the floor, with the paint buckets positioned where the first tiny piece was. SpongeBob says in satisfaction that this is what he's talking about. His tone becomes nervous as he acknowledges they should probably open these cans of permanent paint now. Patrick repeats ominously that it will never, ever come off. SpongeBob adds that if they get it on anything, Mr. Krabs will cut their butts off. Patrick says in a scared voice that Mr. Krabs will mount them on the wall. The paint can open in crisis. SpongeBob takes a screwdriver and tries to open the first paint can lid by carefully moving the screwdriver back and forth under the rim. Patrick begins nervously coaching him, repeatedly saying to be careful. His warnings get louder and more frequent. The camera dramatically zooms in on Patrick's face as he yells with full intensity to be careful. SpongeBob calmly points out that the lid is already off. Patrick looks at the open can and says, "Oh," in a normal voice, then happily announces it's his turn now. Patrick pulls out a giant battle axe and prepares to strike the second paint can with it. SpongeBob hurriedly grabs the can away from Patrick's destructive approach. He says nervously that he's thinking he should do this one too. SpongeBob carefully opens the second lid using the same screwdriver as before. The lid pops open and a blob of paint suddenly jumps out of the can. SpongeBob and Patrick scream in terror. The blob bounces off a piece of tarp. SpongeBob and Patrick scream even louder. The blob continues bouncing off 8 different pieces of tarp before finally landing back safely into the original can. Patrick looks disappointed and says that was a rip-off. SpongeBob holds up a large paintbrush and says they should get their brushes ready. He looks at the brush he's holding and starts sweating profusely. He decides maybe they should start with a smaller brush and throws the large one off screen. He gets a much smaller paintbrush and pulls a single hair out of his nose to use as bristles. Patrick does the same thing but pulls out a huge mass of connected nose hair. SpongeBob dips just the very tip of his tiny paintbrush into the paint can and walks slowly toward a wall. He says in a scared and nervous voice that they have to get started painting this wall. The camera zooms out to show a huge, heavily decorated wall. He continues that they're using permanent paint, that they aren't allowed to get on anything but the wall. He starts sweating even more. He says, "Well, here we go." The paralysis of fear. A time card appears reading 1 hour later. The narrator announces 1 hour later. SpongeBob stands in exactly the same position as before, having not moved at all. He's still staring at the wall with his tiny paintbrush. He says he just needs a few more seconds of mental preparation and then he'll be painting this wall. Another time card appears saying 2 hours later. The narrator announces 2 hours later. SpongeBob still stands in the identical spot, but now there's a puddle of nervous sweat under his feet. He announces he's getting to the painting. A third time card appears reading 3 hours later. The narrator starts to announce it, but the camera zooms out to reveal Patrick is actually holding the time card. Patrick is also sweating nervously. He tells SpongeBob he needs to move it along because he's all out of time cards. SpongeBob remains frozen in place, though the puddle of sweat beneath him has grown significantly larger. He says no problem and announces here he goes. The camera zooms into a small space on the wall. SpongeBob finally makes contact and creates a single vertical line of paint. He pulls the brush back and smiles gleefully at his accomplishment, but then the paint starts dripping down the wall. SpongeBob reacts with alarm. He starts blowing on the paint to try controlling it, blowing it in one direction, then another, then another. He eventually gets a blow dryer, and the paint lifts off the wall in a large bubble floating in the air. SpongeBob says, "Yeah," in relief. Then he notices the giant paint bubble floating and says barnacles. He wonders aloud what could be worse than a giant paint bubble. Patrick says he knows and takes out a bubble wand, dips it in paint, and blows another big bubble, announcing 2 giant paint bubbles. The catastrophic paint explosion. SpongeBob screams no, but the 2 bubbles merge together into one even larger bubble. SpongeBob calls out to Patrick. Patrick asks, "Yeah, SpongeBob." SpongeBob says he doesn't think this bubble can get much bigger. Patrick appears with a bicycle pump inserted into the bubble and yells nonsense while pumping it up even bigger. SpongeBob yells for Patrick to stop. The bubble explodes with tremendous force. Paint splatters everywhere, completely covering the wall and filling in all the old brown spots. SpongeBob moves out of the way just in time for the last bit of paint to splash on the wall in the exact shape and position he was standing. SpongeBob celebrates excitedly that they did it. They painted the whole house without getting a drop of paint on anything but the wall. Then he suddenly shrieks in horror. The camera does a dramatic zoom with ominous music to show a dollar bill on the wall with a tiny dot of paint on it. SpongeBob's eyes literally shatter like eggs and the insides drip onto the floor. SpongeBob falls to the floor himself and announces they're dead. He asks Patrick if he knows what that is. Patrick looks at it thoughtfully and says it's $1, declaring that he wins. SpongeBob says it's not just any dollar. It's Mr. Krabs' first dollar, his most prized possession, and they got paint on it. Patrick says he thinks SpongeBob is overreacting because he doesn't see any paint on it. SpongeBob takes the dollar off the wall and says this isn't a problem. Maybe he can just wipe it off. He tries wiping the paint off using his tie, but this actually makes the paint much more noticeable. He says he thinks he got it and wipes it more, but the paint keeps getting worse until it covers just about the entire dollar. SpongeBob shrieks again. Patrick stupidly points at the dollar with both hands and says, "Oh, now he sees it." The desperate cleaning attempts. SpongeBob declares this is not good. Mr. Krabs is going to be home soon, and when he sees what they did to his first dollar, things will be terrible. The scene cuts to SpongeBob's fantasy, showing his and Patrick's butts mounted on plaques above the fireplace while Mr. Krabs sits in his chair enjoying tea by the fire. SpongeBob and Patrick hold their own butts and scream together. Patrick suddenly has an idea. All they have to do is wash the paint off and Mr. Krabs will never know. SpongeBob starts to mention what Mr. Krabs said, but Patrick plugs SpongeBob's mouth with his hand. Patrick tells him to forget what Mr. Krabs said. Every paint comes off with something. The scene cuts to SpongeBob standing by a washing machine. He asks if it worked. Patrick emerges from the washing machine holding the dollar still covered in paint and wearing a bra on his head. He says no. The scene cuts to SpongeBob using sandpaper on the dollar in Patrick's hand. He asks if it worked. Patrick's hands have been completely sanded away, but the dollar still has paint. Patrick says nope. The scene cuts to SpongeBob using a fire hose connected to a fire hydrant while Patrick screams off screen. SpongeBob asks if it worked. Patrick holds up the dollar, and the force of the water has left a hole completely through his body, except where the dollar and his hands protected him. Patrick says nope. The scene cuts to a room filled with an assortment of violent tools. SpongeBob bangs the dollar Patrick is holding with a bat while Patrick wears a neck brace. SpongeBob announces desperately that nothing is working. The technology solution. Patrick tells SpongeBob to wait because they're not cavemen. He walks over to a computer and declares they have technology. He picks up the entire computer and bangs it directly on the dollar 6 times with tremendous force. The camera zooms in on the dollar, showing it's now all wrinkled and damaged, but the paint remains. SpongeBob says it didn't work. Patrick rants that this is all Mr. Krabs' fault. If he hadn't hung that stupid dollar in the first place, none of this would have happened. He points out it's not like it looks any different than a regular dollar. Why hang it at all? They could just stick any old dollar bill up on the wall and no one would even know the difference. They might as well just reach into his wallet, pull out a dollar, and put it on the wall, and it would look exactly the same. SpongeBob's eyes light up with realization. He urgently tells Patrick to hurry and take out his wallet. Patrick scoffs while looking for a dollar, saying he doesn't see where SpongeBob is going with this. He notices a dollar in his wallet and says, "Hey, a dollar." SpongeBob celebrates that their butts are saved. Now all they have to do is replace the damaged dollar. But before he can finish his sentence, Patrick walks over and puts his dollar into a vending machine. SpongeBob yells for Patrick not to do it and asks why he put it in the machine. The dollar comes out in the change slot. SpongeBob screams for Patrick to grab it quickly. Patrick pushes the dollar back into the machine. SpongeBob keeps yelling, "No." The dollar comes out again, and SpongeBob desperately tells Patrick to get it. SpongeBob starts stammering incoherently as Patrick slams the dollar back into the machine using both hands flat against it. SpongeBob yells a long, drawn-out no. Patrick walks back to SpongeBob carrying the chocolate bar he purchased and asks if SpongeBob wants a bite. The final preparations. SpongeBob says anxiously that they still have time. He looks in a mirror and tells himself not to panic. Panic is the enemy. He is strong. Through his strength, he shall overcome. Outside the house, Mr. Krabs can be heard humming a sea shanty as he approaches. SpongeBob's mirror reflection tells him he's on his own and literally walks away out of the mirror frame. SpongeBob screams and tells Patrick to hurry and put Mr. Krabs' dollar back on the wall. He says he has an idea. Mr. Krabs enters his house and finds all the lights are off. He asks what's going on. SpongeBob says nervously that they're all done and everything looks great. Patrick adds that Mr. Krabs doesn't have to look around because they already did that for him. Mr. Krabs turns on the lights. SpongeBob and Patrick stand there grinning nervously with exaggerated forced smiles. Mr. Krabs observes that they both look like they have a dirty little secret. SpongeBob and Patrick just stare at him silently. Mr. Krabs laughs and says he's kidding. He begins examining their work. Mr. Krabs walks around inspecting the paint job. He says, not bad at all. A nice even coat, high gloss finish, no bubbles. SpongeBob interrupts to agree that it looks great and suggests they'll just be going now. Mr. Krabs suddenly exclaims about flipping fish fossils and asks them to look what they did. SpongeBob cries out that they're so sorry and begs Mr. Krabs not to debutt him. Patrick also begs for mercy. Mr. Krabs asks why they're sorry. They dusted all his knickknacks, and that was really nice of them. The painting cover-up revealed. Mr. Krabs notices something else and exclaims about the Great Barrier Reef. SpongeBob insists it's not their fault. Patrick says they didn't do it on purpose. SpongeBob repeats accident 3 times. Patrick cries that he doesn't want to be buttless. Mr. Krabs points to the floor molding and sarcastically supposes it just painted itself on its own. He examines the tiny ships decorating the wall and calls it craftsmanship. He runs over to a display of dolls lined up perfectly except for one tilted slightly to the left. He says they messed up his dollarama because all the dolls were perfectly aligned. He straightens the tilted doll to an upright position. The doll says, "Mama." Mr. Krabs notes they thought he wouldn't notice, but figures no harm is done. He tells them they're free to go. As Mr. Krabs walks toward the door, he runs directly into a long pile of paintings jutting from the wall. He says ow and notes that's funny. He doesn't remember a stack of paintings sticking out from the wall where his first dollar used to be. In fact, he doesn't remember this painting at all. He takes off a painting of a crying clown, revealing one of a car race underneath. He says, "Or this one," and removes it, showing abstract art. SpongeBob and Patrick tremble in fear. Mr. Krabs continues removing paintings, saying, "Or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one." He takes off a painting of a banana, revealing a painting of the pirate from the show's opening sequence. He says, "Or this one," and removes it. SpongeBob is behind the final painting, hanging by a rope on a nail. He says nervously, "Hi, Mr. Krabs." Mr. Krabs asks what SpongeBob is doing up there. SpongeBob says, "Just hanging around." Patrick gives a thumbs down and says, "Boo." Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to get down onto the floor. SpongeBob stretches his body all the way to the floor while still hanging on the wall. Mr. Krabs says now he's just being silly and takes SpongeBob off the wall completely. The crayon catastrophe. SpongeBob shouts no repeatedly and begs Mr. Krabs not to look because it's a trick. Mr. Krabs asks directly if they got paint all over his first dollar. SpongeBob and Patrick both apologize profusely, saying they're so sorry. Mr. Krabs then asks if they drew on it with crayon. The camera shows the dollar now has 2 dollar signs and a smiley face drawn on it in crayon. SpongeBob turns to Patrick, who grins nervously while holding a green crayon. Patrick explains he thought maybe Mr. Krabs would buy it. Mr. Krabs announces that now he knows what he's got to do. SpongeBob asks if he means their butts. Patrick asks if he can use his one last time. Mr. Krabs takes the dollar from the wall and does something completely unexpected. He licks it. The paint comes off instantly with his saliva. Mr. Krabs puts the dollar back up on the wall, saying, "There we go, good as new." SpongeBob and Patrick stammer repeatedly, unable to form words in their shock and confusion. Mr. Krabs admits casually that he lied. The paint actually comes off with saliva. He laughs at his own trick. SpongeBob thinks he understands now. Mr. Krabs told them the paint was permanent, so he and Patrick would be more careful and not get paint on anything. Mr. Krabs corrects him. No, he just likes to mess with them. He laughs heartily while SpongeBob and Patrick leave his house angrily. Mr. Krabs continues laughing and says the old man still got it. But as he laughs, he sprays spit everywhere and the paint starts coming off all the walls from the moisture. Mr. Krabs looks around at the damage and says he really needs to learn to say it, not spray it. Why this episode endures. Wet Painters succeeds because it maintains tension throughout its entire runtime while delivering consistent comedy. The episode is essentially one extended anxiety attack, as SpongeBob and Patrick try desperately to fix an unfixable problem. Every solution they attempt makes the situation worse rather than better, following classic comedy escalation. The reveal that saliva removes the paint provides the perfect payoff after all their suffering, especially when Mr. Krabs admits he was just messing with them the whole time rather than having any noble reason. The episode demonstrates masterful pacing and structure. It dedicates significant time to building up the threat through Mr. Krabs' warnings and the mounting paranoia. The 3-hour time card sequence where SpongeBob can't bring himself to start painting shows how completely the fear has paralyzed him. When they finally do paint the wall through the exploding bubble, it seems like everything worked out perfectly until they spot that one tiny dot on the dollar. Wet Painters remains one of the most rewatchable episodes because the tension never feels forced or artificial. Every beat follows logically from the setup, and SpongeBob and Patrick's increasingly desperate attempts to clean the paint feel genuine rather than contrived. The ending delivers satisfaction without feeling cheap, and Mr. Krabs getting his comeuppance when his own spit removes the paint provides poetic justice. Over 2 decades later, it stands as one of the finest examples of how SpongeBob could take a simple premise and execute it to perfection. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Dying for Pie, Squidward's guilt over the bomb pie. Dying for Pie, SpongeBob's last day. Dying for Pie is one of the most emotionally complex and darkly comedic episodes in SpongeBob SquarePants history. This Season 2 episode originally aired on the 27th of January 2001 and drew 3.43 million viewers. The episode tackles themes of mortality, guilt, and friendship through the premise that SpongeBob has accidentally eaten a bomb disguised as a pie. It balances genuine emotion with absurd humor while delivering one of the most shocking endings in the series. The Reluctant Brotherhood. The episode begins with Squidward dreaming about playing piano on an island when Dream SpongeBob interrupts by hitting a bell and announcing an order. Squidward wakes to his alarm clock. A bubble transition shows him driving to work with a bumper sticker reading, "Don't ask me about my day." He blearily prepares himself for the workday, putting on his Krusty Krab hat with a tired expression. SpongeBob follows him from inside, smiling, but Squidward walks past without acknowledgement. Mr. Krabs greets Squidward cheerfully and asks if he's ready. Squidward asks if he means ready to go home. Mr. Krabs says no, ready to exchange gifts for Employee Brotherhood Day. Squidward explains that Mr. Krabs pays him to stand behind the register, take orders, and give change. But Mr. Krabs could never pay him enough to act brotherly towards SpongeBob, who is washing a table with a buffer before scrubbing his own face until it scrambles. Mr. Krabs says Squidward's attitude is precisely why they're having this event and tells him to pay attention. SpongeBob announces he has a gift for Squidward. He holds up a sweater with a picture of a heart containing Squidward's face and the words, "I heart you." Mr. Krabs tells Squidward to try it on since it's got him written all over it. Squidward struggles getting the sweater over his head. SpongeBob explains he wasn't sure how big to make the head hole, so he used a watermelon for size. He asks if Squidward loves it. Squidward says it's itchy and asks what it's made of. The camera shows SpongeBob with no eyelashes or eyebrows. He announces it's made of eyelashes. A disgusted Squidward throws the sweater back. The bomb purchase. Squidward asks if he can resume his minimum wage duties. Mr. Krabs says only after he presents his brotherhood gift. Squidward offers to buy SpongeBob a gumball. Mr. Krabs insists he has to make the gift according to the rules. Squidward walks toward the door, saying the only thing he's making is for the exit. He opens it to find SpongeBob crying while wearing a sweater made from his tears. SpongeBob asks if this is better. Squidward sighs and walks toward the kitchen. Mr. Krabs says he knew Squidward would come around. Squidward looks out the window and sees pirates carrying pies onto a ship. The captain yells that if they drop one slice of his booty, he'll have their booty. Squidward walks outside and politely asks about the homemade pies. A pirate clarifies they weren't made in a home but in a factory, a bomb factory. They're bombs. Squidward says that's too bad because he thought they were pies and wanted to buy one. He holds up money. The captain jumps down and says they were kidding about the bomb stuff. The pie costs $25. Squidward asks what flavor it is. The pirates all talk at once, saying cherry, apple, and raspberry. Squidward figures if it'll get Mr. Krabs off his back, he'll buy it. He gives the captain the money and the captain runs off happily. Squidward places the pie on Mr. Krabs' desk, saying it's fresh from the oven and he'll be returning to his life now. Mr. Krabs says he needs to make sure Squidward did it right. He grabs a piece and is about to eat it but decides it would go great with milk. While walking to get milk, he trips over a book and the pie piece flies into the milk, causing a massive explosion that sends both of them flying out of the Krusty Krab. The devastating discovery. Mr. Krabs accuses Squidward of trying to kill him over a little New Age management. Squidward insists he had no idea and can explain. Inside the office, SpongeBob asks if Mr. Krabs is okay because he heard something. He notices a pie with a card from Squidward that reads, "To SpongeBob, well, here you go." Outside, Squidward explains what happened. Mr. Krabs repeats in shock that Squidward spent $25 on a bomb. They both shout about a bomb being in the Krusty Krab and run back to the office, but the pie is gone. Mr. Krabs says that's where Squidward left it. Squidward says it's not there. SpongeBob appears licking and kissing his fingers 5 times before rubbing his stomach. He thanks Squidward for the pie and skips away singing. Mr. Krabs tells Squidward he had to kill SpongeBob after the boy cried him a sweater of tears. He asks how Squidward will live with himself. Squidward imagines SpongeBob delivering an order to a customer before exploding with pieces flying everywhere. Squidward screams that they need to call the hospital. Mr. Krabs says it won't do any good because he's seen this before. When that pie hits SpongeBob's lower intestine, boom. Squidward asks in horror if he's seen this before. Mr. Krabs says 11 times as a matter of fact. Squidward calls the hospital, but they confirm it won't do any good. He hangs up declaring SpongeBob is a goner. They look out the window and see SpongeBob cheerfully wiping a table, making the final hours count. Mr. Krabs says not to tell SpongeBob because that'll only make him feel worse. The way he sees it, SpongeBob has until sunset. Why ruin his last day on Earth? The lad deserves to enjoy his final hours. Squidward tears up and says Mr. Krabs is right. He's going to make SpongeBob's final hours the best he's ever had. This time, there's going to be love. So much that SpongeBob will drown in it. Mr. Krabs writes on a notepad to watch out for Squidward. Squidward walks over to SpongeBob, who is singing happily while wiping a table. Squidward says he forgot to tell SpongeBob there's a part 2 to his gift. SpongeBob bounces up and down, repeating part 2 until Squidward grabs him. Squidward asks, what's the most fun thing SpongeBob can think of? SpongeBob takes out a list he calls his friendship list of fun things he likes to do. The things that are extra fun are written in red. Squidward observes everything is in red. SpongeBob says he knows. Squidward says they'd better start now if they want to get through the list before SpongeBob dies of anticipation. They walk out of the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs cries, puts a help wanted sign in the window, and continues crying. SpongeBob notes it looks like they're replacing Squidward. Squidward suggests looking at the list. The first item is showing his best friend, Squidward, to everybody in town. They show various townspeople. One kid throws a rock at Squidward's head. Squidward is glad that's over. SpongeBob says the next activity is showing Squidward to everyone while wearing a salmon suit. Squidward asks if SpongeBob will wear it. SpongeBob laughs, saying that's a good one. Squidward ends up wearing the salmon suit while kids throw rocks at him. The friendship list activities. Next comes knock-knock jokes. SpongeBob knocks and Squidward asks, "Who's there?" SpongeBob says he is and laughs. They walk backwards with SpongeBob imitating backup alarm beeping. They make noises with their tongues out while moving their hands in front of their faces. Squidward walks around with SpongeBob as his face. SpongeBob says that's what it would be like if Squidward had him for a face. Squidward says he can't breathe. SpongeBob performs open heart surgery on Squidward, who questions if he should be poking it like that. SpongeBob asks, "Who's the doctor?" Squidward's heart squirts blood. SpongeBob checks off multiple items and announces the last thing on the list is watching the sunset with Squidward. Squidward reacts with alarm, remembering Mr. Krabs said SpongeBob has until sunset before the bomb hits his lower intestine. SpongeBob sees Mr. Krabs in his thought balloon and greets him. Mr. Krabs weeps and runs off. Squidward says if SpongeBob wants a sunset, he'll get a sunset. At the sunset, SpongeBob says underwater sunsets are beautiful. Squidward agrees. SpongeBob says this is great with just the three of them, SpongeBob, Squidward, and the brick wall Squidward built between them. SpongeBob says sunsets remind him of fruit bowls and asks what they make Squidward think of. Squidward imagines SpongeBob exploding and says explosions, then corrects himself to erosion. The explosion that never comes. SpongeBob says if he were to die right now in some fiery explosion due to a friend's carelessness, that would be okay. Squidward tears up until SpongeBob burps. SpongeBob says it feels like something just dropped into his lower intestine and smells like cherry, grape, or blueberry. The sun starts going down. SpongeBob says he always loves counting down the sunset. He counts 5 and tells Squidward to do the rest. Squidward counts 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing happens. SpongeBob says they started too early. Squidward counts again. An explosion is heard behind the wall after 3. He finishes counting while sobbing. He says at least he made SpongeBob's last hours meaningful. He's such a good person. Another explosion knocks down the brick wall with black smoke. SpongeBob is still alive, blowing bomb-shaped bubbles that explode. Squidward stammers in confusion. SpongeBob says they already played Babel like an idiot. Squidward demands to know why SpongeBob is still there. SpongeBob explains that since they finished the list, he made a new one. He holds up a book filled with ideas that should take until January. Squidward slaps the book away and yells that he spent the whole day doing ridiculous things because SpongeBob was supposed to explode. SpongeBob asks if Squidward wants him to explode. Squidward says yes, that's what he's been waiting for. SpongeBob tries by yelling at Gary about finishing dessert, the real bomb. Squidward stomps repeatedly, saying that's not what he meant. SpongeBob is supposed to explode into 1,000,000 pieces. SpongeBob asks why he would do that. Squidward says because the pie he ate was a bomb. SpongeBob asks, what pie? Squidward describes the one he left on the counter that morning that he bought from pirates for $25 without knowing it was a bomb. SpongeBob realizes and pulls out the exploding pie. He was saving it in his pocket for them to share. He walks forward and trips on a rock. The pie flies into Squidward's face in slow motion, causing an explosion the size of an atomic bomb that decimates all of Bikini Bottom. Squidward says, ouch, in the destroyed town as the episode fades to black. The episode's dark brilliance. Dying for pie works because it commits fully to its dark premise while maintaining humor throughout. The episode genuinely makes viewers believe SpongeBob will die, creating real tension and emotion. Squidward's guilt-driven transformation from irritated coworker to devoted friend feels authentic. The activities from SpongeBob's friendship list provide comedy while reinforcing the emotional stakes. The twist that SpongeBob never ate the pie delivers a perfect punchline after all the build-up. But the episode doesn't end there. It gives us the actual explosion with Squidward getting hit instead. The massive blast that destroys Bikini Bottom provides a shocking finale that pushes cartoon violence to its extreme. Dying for Pie remains one of the most memorable episodes for its unique blend of genuine emotion and dark comedy. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.